Hello, everybody! It has been a long time coming, but I am here with my good buddy Qatherine.
Yes, hello. It's been 140 hours incoming on my end.
But we are finally back to talk about Dragon Quest with the newest release in the series, Dragon Quest XI. Oh my gosh, this is quite the game. Oh man,
Yes.
it's so good. It's so good. So,
Yes.
um, we both. I'm gonna speak for both of us in saying that we both love this one. It is fantastic. So, if you have any doubts about playing it, go do that. If you want to be convinced a little bit more, I'd recommend staying around and listening. We are going to be talking about stuff more generally at first, so you don't have to fear spoilers and for a good while, and we'll let you know once spoilers are going to be a thing. So, yeah, let's get started and stuff. So, the wait for this one was hard. It was really, really, really hard. Like, I remember when we were because the game was first announced for a Western release in 2017 on the day the game was due to come out in Japan.
Yes,
And
Yuji Horii, I was actually pretty impressed that they got Yuji Horii in front of a camera and had him, announce it himself. It was kind of cool to see.
yeah,
the
it was
creator.
definitely cool. Yeah, for sure. And so I just remember we were waiting so long for DQ11 news before that came out because we had heard nothing about the localization before that. So we were following like every tiny piece of detail we could find about the Japanese stuff, hoping that it might have a morsel of information for the Western release. And then we had to wait like a whole nother year and change after that to actually get the game.
And remember,
Too, which was
all the little potential leaks of that one
yeah.
Sony press release where they said something about DQ11 in their portfolio, but it was unclear if they meant the just the global portfolio, or if it meant, oh, they're bringing it outside of Japan.
Oh yeah, and not to mention the confusion about which versions we would end up getting too, because in Japan there was a 3DS version released that sadly we did not end up getting at all, which is a shame.
I actually did import it, and I played a very small bit of it, and then it was a combination of at the time it was a bit beyond my level of reading comprehension in Japanese for me to play and feel engaged in it, and yeah, just other time constraints, I wasn't able to play more of it. But I really appreciate a lot of things about the 3DS version,
I want to play that 16-bit mode so bad.
that's really what I think. If I ever go back to that, which I might, especially now that I know the story, I know I won't get stuck because I can't understand what people are saying. I would play the 2D mode for that nostalgia factor.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The 3D mode is nice if you don't have for people who didn't have access to a PS4 or wanted to play it on the go. But it's essentially just a crappier graphics version.
I mean, for a 3DS game, it looks pretty good. It's like an upgraded Dragon Quest VII remake,
Yeah.
which I thought looked good.
It's better. It's definitely better than Dragon Quest VII, and but it's somewhere between the Dragon Quest VII 3DS and the DQ8 3DS. I feel in terms of
yeah,
graphics.
it's not when you compare it to how the PS4 version looks. And also, we got it on Steam too. That was a new thing. Is that there was a Steam release.
It's apparently very intensive though. So I was talking to a friend whose roommate was playing it on Steam, and his computer
Oh
crapped out.
jeez.
I think he's one of those PC people.
Yeah.
So I think the friend said oh, he's been overclocking his machine for a long time. So it was probably just the machine was also being. But yeah, I get from the sound of things, it's pretty intensive to run.
Yeah. But if you have a good enough PC, there are some benefits. Like, the game runs at 60 I think the game can run at 60 on PC. Don't quote me on that. I think it can on PC, but not on PS4. And also loading times are cut down a good deal on PC if you have the specs to run it, which I think is good because the loading times, while not obnoxious on the PS4, are there and they're semi-frequent. So
I want to know is if it reduces the lag in like that spot in Honolulu and that spot in Porto Valor where there's so many torches and the lighting engine is just like chugga 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 chugga.
Oh, and walking into Gondolia for the first time, where the game is just like, help me, please. I mean,
I love this game, but I think there were like multiple times where you're just like, oh gosh, they really like, this hardware is struggling to keep up sometimes.
And I mean, I should say that the times where the game frame rate kind of drops or whatever are not really very frequent, and the game's beautiful otherwise. Like, oh my gosh, this game, we're kind of jumping out of order a little bit, but whatever. The game's graphics are just so good. Like, it is a really, really pretty game. The art direction, like of course the art's classic Akira Toriyama art, and the monsters are great as always, but the environments in this game are just so striking, is the thing. It's not like most of these areas aren't something we've seen before for Dragon Quest. There's a couple that are like completely new for the series, but like, you know, we've seen a snowy area before, we've seen a grassy plain before, but they're just so well done and they mesh with everything else so well that it's just a breathtaking world to be in for the time you're playing the game, you know?
And there's a level of detail and complexity in the environments that I don't think any other DQ game has been able to have. Like, one thing I'm thinking of is one dungeon where there's like spider webs all over it, and you kind of like, there are parts where your character has to push through the spider webs.
Oh yeah, that one, yeah.
You know, there's all sorts of little details in environments that were not in the other 3D games, and that's really cool to see.
I mean, this is the first game on this scale we've had since Dragon Quest VIII, which was a PS2 game.
Yeah.
It came out in like 2004. So this is really, and I mean, that's not to discredit Dragon Quest. Oh, well, there was Dragon Quest X, which was an MMO game. So I don't know how that game graphically holds up because I haven't played it, but a lot of people in Japan don't really kind of count it because it's an MMO and thus different. And, you know, nothing against Dragon Quest IX, but maybe 3D on the original DS wasn't the best way to go.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
very
it tries. It tries very hard, but yeah. But it's just the art design in general is just really good. Like, and the character designs, I think, as well. I think these characters are some of the most memorable and striking in the series for a long time.
I would also say very original for Toriyama. So like we kind of missed, because life happened, we kind of missed having a discussion on DQ6, but I think like the two of us sort of agree DQ6 was the pinnacle of Toriyama just going to Dragon Ball Z designs. Like almost every character in DQ6 you can look at and say, that's Android 18. That's Android 16? Question mark? Carver?
17?
I don't know.
Oh wait, no,
which
16.
Which one are the lesbian robots?
The buff one. There's a buff robot.
Yeah, but
like Trunks and Terry.
Trunks and Terry is the obvious comparison. The hero looks like Goku
Vegeta. Vegeta. I remember we had this discussion during a DQ Heroes part.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, that's Goku hair. And I'm like, that's not Goku.
His face is Goku, though. He's got a derpy face.
Yeah.
But this game, it's like, with the slight exception, maybe, like a faint exception for Serena, I look at these characters and I don't see Dragon Ball characters. I see original faces. And that's cool.
Like, I think we'll talk about the characters more in depth later, but I think part of that is because it's such an unconventional party, in general. Like, you got a 10-year-old girl, a traveling jester, the general hero as point, and a martial artist sex appeal character who's actually not that gratuitous, which is a nice change of pace for an RPG. You know, like, Jade is definitely designed to be the sex appeal character, but you compare her to, like, Jessica, for example, who has her boobs literally almost falling out of her top, or, you know, I'll just point at Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and not mention anything else. You know, it's just like, okay, yes, this character's clearly meant to be sexy, but, like, she's actually wearing clothes, which is also nice as well. But yeah, the art on the characters is so good, and not even just the main cast, like, the supporting cast, too, I think is also really well designed. Like, the characters from Cobblestone, the hometown,
Yep.
I think as well. Oh god, what's it? The characters from Sniffleheim, I have a soft spot for too,
Yes.
and their designs.
Yep.
Like the Queen and the Witch and all that. I like their everybody's so memorable, and all the royalty too from the King scene. It's just so good. I love it. Yeah. Any favorite designs on your end?
Oh, that's a good question. I like Jade's design because, as you said, it's like it fits a really good balance between being sexy and being like, it's sort of a confident sexy. It's you know what it is? It's sexy without always being super male gazy. Like,
that's a good way to put it.
so like
yeah.
her, you know, Jade has like all the characters have different costumes, and Jade has a bunny suit costume, and that is totally like a male gaze outfit, you know. But like her normal outfit, like, yeah, she's got like fantastic legs and she's got a full chest, but it doesn't feel like it's there just for the purpose of enticing a male player or a player who's attracted to women. It's there, like, you know, that's what, like, on her a couple of her final costumes also have, like, you know, it's sexy, but it doesn't feel male gazy.
Yeah, I'd say especially her last costume.
Yes.
I think also the Chinese kind of looking one.
Yeah.
I think as well. And I mean, like, obviously they did give her sex appeal. Like, she's got a swimsuit outfit. The Battle Princess is a little fetishy too.
She's got the Divine Bustier from DQVIII, which I think some of those were put in as like series staples. You know, the battle bikini has been a thing since DQ3.
Yeah, for sure.
But I kind of appreciated that, like, while there was some sort of, like, you know, there was some adhering to that sort of trope, but she also kind of felt like her own character.
Yeah,
and I don't want to go into spoilers, but I appreciate how that she wasn't like the sexiest character was not the romantic interest.
Oh yeah, that's also because we'll talk about that definitely as we go on. If I had to pick a favorite design myself for a character, oh geez, there's a lot. Honestly, I think I would go with Hendrik and Jasper. Honestly, who are two of the antagonists, main antagonists in the game, and just how they're like. I mean, I know that it's a relatively common thing to have the one in white be sneakier and the one in black actually be the one noble, because oh my gosh, that twists our expectations around. Oh my gosh, but they're so striking, memorable, and threatening looking for different reasons. Is the thing. Like Jasper, you know, he's got a plan out there to get you. Like, you just look at him, and you can tell, oh shit, I don't want to mess with him. And same with Hendrik, too. Like, when he's very, very early on in the game, when he points the sword at you, he's legitimately menacing.
And he's the one who's on your tail for
the majority of the beginning of the game. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And, yeah, it's just those two as villains early on are just really well done, and we'll be talking about them plenty when we get to the story aspects of this game. But funny enough for this game is that in a case of something that's happened to Dragon Quest a couple of times before, there's actually some upgrades to this version of the game that the Japanese version did not have, and presumably the Japanese version will not have until the Switch version comes out. At the time of this recording, we do not know almost anything about the Switch version. New details are supposed to pop up in a couple of days. So since this almost certainly will be a multi-part discussion, we'll talk about we might be able to, by part 2, we might be able to talk about what we're thinking about the Switch version and stuff like that. But a couple of things that the English version added. There's a couple of quality of life things, like number 1, a run button. There was not a run button in Dragon Quest XI in Japan, and it is very, very helpful because it's a long enough game as is. So
yeah, I really, there were multiple times where I was like, I can't believe there wasn't a run button. I didn't use the horse as much because like the run speed was so fast. He runs so fast. But yeah, the run button was fantastic. Although, did you ever get the thing where you ran into like a part of a town and the game just made you stop because it needed to load because the game
I've had that.
The game
that happens in a lot of games.
Yeah, the game the game was built expecting you would move this fast and the game would be able to load part B of an area in the background. But because they added the run speed, sometimes you move too fast and it would just be like, hold up, and you just stop.
It's thankfully, if you've ever played Zelda Breath of the Wild, it's not as bad as if you're driving the motorcycle in that game, though. Because if you, like, drive the motorcycle around Ganon's castle, you stop, like, every 5 seconds. So, thankfully, it's not that bad. So one of the other big changes to the North American version was added difficulty options. So, the game overall is... Yeah, those were added.
That I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah, because one of the complaints about the games on the Japanese version was that it's a relatively easy game. And yeah, for Dragon Quest, not that it's the easiest RPG I've ever played, but especially for Dragon Quest standards, it's not taxing. You know, there's plenty of chances to get EXP, plenty of items and whatnot. So multiple optional difficulty settings can be put on whenever you start a game. And there's some standard ones, like harder enemies, no running, and stuff like that. But there's also some really, really cool ones, like you're not allowed to wear armor, you're not allowed to buy anything. And of course, the best one of them all, Shy Pox, where your character literally gets too embarrassed to take their turn and just skip it. Which sounds annoying, and I probably won't play that one, but it's still great that it's there, you know? So both of us played without them, right?
Yeah, I just played the normal.
Yeah, but I mean, it gives me a great reason to want to go back. Like, I'd replay this game anyway, but I want to see how hard those harder enemies are, for sure, and how much more I will have to use the resources the game gives me when I choose the harder difficulty option.
Yeah.
So the last big change that the Western version got is voice acting. Yes, so like Dragon Quest VIII before it, actually, because DQ8 Japan didn't have voice acting either. So, you know, this is brand new, and it's really well done.
I think it's great. I would say it's better than DQ8. I would say DQ8 was ranged between good to great, and this is, like, I would say the worst voice acting in this was probably as good as or better than the best in DQ8.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you kind of judge DQ8 by different standards because it's a PS2 RPG.
Well,
and
I'm not thinking about like the audio quality, but just like how well the characters emote and you know, whether they say the word.
I mean, that's true, but one of the things about Dragon Quest VIII was that it was really well dubbed, especially when compared to games contemporary to its time. Like, I'm gonna pick on Final Fantasy X a little bit here, whereas if you compare the voice acting between Dragon Quest VIII and Final Fantasy X, there's really not any comparison as to which one's better.
Are you saying you think DQ8's voice acting is better than 10, or?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. That's a discussion for, that's a longer discussion, but
Happy Festival fireworks, yeah?
That's writing. That's not voice acting.
No, Waka's voice acting's pretty dang bad. Okay, well, anyway, we'll have a again,
We'll
that's a
talk about
discussion for
Final
another
Fantasy
day.
X once Ted plays that. On the 27th of Never.
Exactly. I'm glad you know me so well. But anyway, Dragon Quest XI's voice acting is superb all around. I can't think of any character that I thought was phoned in at all, even minor ones.
I'm also struggling. Like, maybe there's one, but I'm struggling to think of one where I was like,
Because, like, even in Dragon Quest VIII, there was, like, there were a couple of, like, guards or other people with, like, 2 or 3 lines that, it's like, okay, they got an extra to do this. But in Dragon Quest VIII, in Dragon Quest XI, the voice acting all around is superb. Shoutouts especially to Selvando,
yes.
whose voice acting is phenomenal. Both Jasper and Hendrik, I think, are amazing as well. They're like 2 of my favorite characters in the game. And any other mentions for voice acting shoutouts?
I really warmed up to Eric. His voice, it was never for me a problem with the actor that I had at the beginning. It was a problem of this wasn't the voice I pictured for this character, but he really grew on me. Yeah, I would say Veronica was great as well.
Oh, of course, Veronica, yeah, because she owns it, and we'll talk about her character eventually, but the voice is very important with a character like that to make them endearing and not obnoxious, because Dragon Quest Heroes 2 with Maribel, she crosses that line to obnoxious, and Veronica, the actress, makes sure not to cross that line, which is really, really good. So, the Japanese version on Switch will have Japanese voice acting. I think it'll be harder. It'll be really weird listening to the Japanese voices after, and comparing them to the English one. I actually wonder if the Japanese actors are going to take any cues from the English actors to color their performance, because I know that's something that English actors do when dubbing Japanese material. I don't know if they do that as much the other way around, but we'll see. Especially when it's a Japanese-oriented property.
Yeah.
Because, like, if they're dubbing something that was made in America, then of course they're gonna use. But if it's a Japanese-made property first, it's interesting. I'm really interested to see how that will turn out.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see how it turns out, because I would agree. Like, I think it would almost make more sense for the Japanese performance to be based on the original Japanese script, and they also might be getting direction from like Hori or someone else who was involved in the writing of the script.
Because that's why they didn't have voice acting in the game originally to begin with, was because they were changing and fine-tuning the script up until the final weeks before release. So there was literally no time for them to write this, for them to have voice acting.
Yep,
pretty
because
much. So
Hori stated in interviews that he didn't want to have to finalize the script as far in advance as would have been necessary to have a full performance voice acting.
Yeah, of course. So it's so good. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, when it comes to other stuff revolving around the voice acting and the sound, music. The music for this game has been relatively controversial. If the first thing you see when you type in Dragon Quest XI music onto YouTube is a video by Stop Skeletons from Fighting telling you about why it's terrible. So
disclaimer, I haven't watched that video, so I don't.
Me neither, but
sounds so clickbaity. I don't want to.
Same, but so music. What did you think about it?
I liked it. I'm pretty, like, I guess I'm pretty easy to please, but I liked it. I really liked the battle theme. I would say it's probably in like my top 3 with like 4 or 5.
The battle theme specifically, or the soundtrack as a whole?
The battle theme specifically. I would say,
okay.
like, I mean, I think my favorite battle themes exempting. No, actually, I don't like Nine's battle theme. I was gonna say exempting Nine because I haven't played it, but I know Nine's well enough that I don't. That's not one of my favorites. My favorites are like 4, 5, and 6, and I would add DQ11 into like that group of like top tier DQ battle themes.
Yeah. I mean, tens is also really good too, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right about tens. I forgot about that one. Yeah, I would say I liked the battle theme a lot. I liked a lot of the other music. Just in sort of like the composition way. They definitely sort of recycled some tracks from previous games.
They recycled a lot of tracks, like a lot. Like, it feels like almost half the soundtrack at points, because like some of them are only used briefly, like and some of them are used towards the end of the game too. But like, at least 2 of the town themes, Hado and Arborea, are brought back. The sailing theme is Dragon Quest IV's sailing theme.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it
I
is.
noticed that. What's Hado's brought back from? Is that?
That's
Japan?
the Japan theme from Dragon Quest III.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because that's the Japanese area.
I recognize that Arborea and Mount Angela, Penglai were DQ8's Cathedral theme, which is kind of not fitting, given.
Yeah, because that's supposed to be a menacing. That's supposed to make these areas feel like very important and like, okay, I should bow my head and try not to disturb all the important people there. So, yeah. Also, there's a lot, like the DQ5 Shrine theme, the underwater theme from Dragon Quest VI. There's a lot of remixes. And I mean, granted, it was really cool as a fan to hear all those remixes as well, because, you know, like when you get to Octagonia and you hear the Dragon Quest IV battle theme for the tournament, like I was like, oh my gosh, it's the Dragon Quest IV battle theme. And you know, those are all great tracks that they brought back, so I'm sure it doesn't bother a new time player as well. But when it comes to the original tracks from Dragon Quest XI, while I liked a good number of them, there was also a good number of them that I thought were kind of forgettable. Like, I love the overworld theme. I love the standard battle theme. Those 2 are really, really, really good. I really love those ones. And 2 other themes that are slightly spoiler-y are also amazing. But in terms of, like, the standard town themes, you know, most of those don't really do much for me. Most of the dungeon music I felt was forgettable. There wasn't anything that felt like high energy like the tower music in Dragon Quest normally is. It was all pretty vanilla.
I liked at least one of the dungeon themes. I remember I really liked, but I would agree it wasn't a high energy dungeon theme. It was a cave. Like, yeah, there's sort of a distinction in Dragon Quest a lot of the time between like a cave dungeon theme and a tower dungeon theme. And I don't really feel like there was a tower theme.
Usually better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there were. This is actually one of the first, a very rare occurrence for me in Dragon Quest. There were actually some themes that I straight up did not like the boss theme. The boss theme I actually think is the weakest boss theme in the franchise.
There was
sadly.
Another theme that sometimes played during boss-like encounters. There was like the standard boss theme, which I agree I was not a fan of. But there was another theme that played in a few encounters, and I don't know if it was a recycled theme or an original theme. But I liked that one better.
Was it like the hurry up kind of music? Because, I mean, it was fine. It makes you feel like you need to hurry up, but...
yeah, I need to like browse through the soundtrack to pick it out, but yeah, I was also not a huge fan of the boss theme. I think I texted you when I ran into the first boss encounter. I was like, what is this music? And you're like, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the other big thing about the music, and it's the elephant in the room, is the instruments, or lack thereof.
Oh, yeah.
So, at least this time, the Japanese, there isn't, like, this frustration of knowing that there's a better version out there. Because that was the big problem with the 3DS games. Dragon Quest VII and Dragon Quest VIII on 3DS in the West used a MIDI soundtrack when the other versions had an orchestral soundtrack. In this version, everybody just has the MIDI soundtrack. So at least it's equal.
So even
this
in
time.
Japan on
Yeah.
the PS4, they didn't get an orchestral soundtrack.
Yeah, the orchestral. There was no orchestral sound. The only thing that's orchestrated in the game is the main opening theme.
Oh,
That's it.
I didn't even realize that. I thought Japan did get an orchestral soundtrack for the PS4 version.
There is orchestral versions of the songs because they did an orchestral concert later on, but there's no like orchestrated version for the game itself. Everybody just has the same MIDI soundtrack, and
Huh.
I think that's where a lot of people are kind of annoyed with the music because the MIDIs are not the best quality MIDIs out there. Like they're about on par with the MIDIs that they used in Dragon Quest 7 and 8 3DS for the West. And while that kind of sound is acceptable on a handheld, when you're playing a full-blown epic console game, it's a little underwhelming and it undercuts some of the gravitas, I feel like. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say like partly I think I haven't listened to the orchestral versions of like these tracks, so it's almost like I don't have anything to compare it by. But I can I
Yeah.
can definitely say when I like there's obviously a quality difference between orchestrated music and the MIDI music. And I hadn't realized that that it was just nobody got an orchestral version.
Were you just so used to them getting the orchestral version anyway that you just assumed it?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I assumed they got it, and it was just like, oh, we can't, like, I thought it was they got the orchestral version, and it was just the licensing to have the orchestral version outside of Japan. Because a lot of the times these orchestral versions have been done by, like, the Tokyo Metropolitan Opera.
Yeah.
And so that's, like, you know, there's a lot of music rights that could be involved in distributing that. But yeah, I assume they got like what's he crapping at? Like what? Why?
I don't know. Like I really don't. Like for a game this big, like that's one of the I think again, like Dragon Quest VIII, you and me are not as high on that game as some other people were. But I think part of what made that game leave such a strong impression on so many people who played it, especially if it was their first Dragon Quest, was, you know, that it had really, really good production values, really good voice acting, really good graphics, and really good orchestrated music, which, if music on RPGs was played with real instruments, it was usually like a rock-centric soundtrack more often than a orchestrated one, you know? So it feels, when the PS2 game feels like it has a higher quality soundtrack, it's a little odd,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, but I mean, granted, I still think the music's good. I think that there's a lot of hyperbole going on about the music, where you'll see certain people be like, the music ruined the game, or the music is terrible. I don't think it's terrible. Like, I wouldn't put this in my top 5 Dragon Quest soundtracks, but it's good. You know, it's still plenty good. Orchestrated soundtrack is probably my number 1 wish for the Switch version. But,
Is that something
you know,
people have been? I think you mentioned to me people have been able to mod that into the Steam version.
yes, that's one of the only interesting mods as far as I've seen so far for the Switch version. Not the Switch version, sorry, for the PC version, is modding in the music, the orchestrated music. So, and I'm surprised it stayed up as long as it has. As far as I'm aware, it hasn't been taken down at all. So, if that's one benefit to playing on your PC, is that you can get the orchestral soundtrack, which is beautiful. So, it's all on YouTube too, so go give it a listen. Who cares what Koichi Tsujiyama thinks? So, yeah, but, I think that covers everything kind of like presentation-wise, unless if we forgot something.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so let's talk about that meaty gameplay and stuff. Yeah. So this game is just so fun.
Yes.
So fun to play. Which is the most important thing. Like it's Dragon Quest, but it's just improved. Not really even just improved, but it's so polished, I think, is one of the big things, you know? Like everything about the world feels so lived in and organic, because like you're gonna be spending hours of this game just wandering around the overworld, looking for stuff and looking for monsters to fight and all that, and it just feels so much fun to do that. Like, from stuff, it's really, I'm being vague because it's hard to describe the simple joys of this game, but it's like everything feels put together so precisely. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would say it doesn't fall into the trap that a lot of open world games fall into, where it's a big world and there's nothing to do in it. There's a lot.
Oh, yeah,
there's a
for sure.
lot to do in the overworld. The encounters aren't random. They're like all monsters on the map. Pretty early on, you get sort of like a game-long side quest of finding like these crossbow targets that are really hard to find.
Oh, I cheated. I gave up.
I'm gonna cheat too.
Like I gave up and I looked them up on a guide because they're devious. Like honestly, a lot of the times it's easier to just wiggle your character around and look to see if the icon appears over where it would be, because they rotate too, and so if it's on the back side where you don't see the cross the target part of it, you can miss it pretty easily. So yeah, like I think that's the important thing is that there's stuff to do a lot of the time, and the world that you're wandering around is really, really interesting while you do it. Like, for example, this is a small thing, but just watching the monsters goof around is a simple joy in this game. Like, because monsters will walk up to each other, and, like, restless armors will salute, or the pigs will flip at each other, or you'll see the calamari kids going in a conga line. And like one of my favorite examples is early on in the game when you come up to the drummer enemies and they've got the trail of slimes following behind them.
Yeah.
It's so good. Like it's not like you're just running forward and taking in the scenery. The world feels so alive, which is really, really important, because I mean there are games like the first one that I'm thinking of is Zelda Breath of the Wild, where you are doing a lot. There's stuff to do in that world, but there's a lot of just walking and running at points, and you're just taking in the scenery. But here, you're not only taking in the scenery, but it's so kinetic as well, which leads the game a very energetic atmosphere, even when you're doing the parts of the game like farming materials or whatever that some people might consider boring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of different fun things to do, and exploring the overworld, I think, is one of the best. It's one of the best worlds, I think, in Dragon Quest. Like I know you learn how to navigate the area like the back of your hand by the end of the game. And I think that's a really important thing for me in a game, is to become attached to not just characters but the world and the areas too.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I definitely know what you mean. It feels like there's a big world and you want to explore it. You want to find, and it rewards you for exploring, because there are like sparkly spots on the overworld where you can find materials that can be incredibly useful for crafting. Later on, when you get your super secret flying thing of the game, there's places you can go to that are only accessible by flight, and you can find some of the best equipment in the game in those places. So it encourages you to go to those places.
Not to mention, while the game can be fairly linear if you're just going from waypoint to waypoint, the game lets you explore areas out of order, which I think is important for a game to feel like Dragon Quest. Because if Dragon Quest is too linear, it doesn't feel like a true, because the openness is part of the experience to me. So like the game is like, okay, we have to go to Zwardrust now, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. And then I'm gonna go sail somewhere else, and the game will let you explore a lot. Like I found the library dungeon a good 15 hours before I was actually supposed to go there, and I explored that whole thing, and the enemies there were too hard for me. But, like, I kept on going anywhere because I just wanted to see all this different stuff. And it's just so nice. Like, there are a couple of things that there are roadblocks, because there need to be, because otherwise you'll walk into endgame monsters and die. But I appreciate a game where they don't come up with incredibly stupid stuff to keep you on railroaded, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's so good. But yeah, the overworld, I mean, it's one of those, it's hard to explain what about it makes it so fun. Like, I mean, I guess there are some things like the mounts you can ride. Like, those are pretty neat. They don't change. There are only a couple of dungeons that use them interestingly. Like late game when you get the one that can fly, that one is used for some interesting level design. But you know, other than that, it's just like, oh, there's a ledge to jump up there, and you just jump up onto the ledge in the egg bot. But the charm of riding the egg bot still never ends to me, because you hop around in the little egg bot and he's hiding in there and he's got the joy.
I love that you can see him hiding in the egg bot. That like the hero just
it's
hides
so good.
there. So cute.
Yeah, and like the skeleton rider too. Like, I guess I'll be getting into this more, I think, when we go through the story, but I feel like more dungeons and more dungeons that use the mounts interestingly would have helped the game some. But that's a minor complaint, I would say, personally. But yeah, so the exploration, I think, in this game it's just really well done. I love all the different areas, and exploring them is just great. So the battle system, actually, it's changed a lot more than one might assume just by looking at it.
Yeah,
you know?
I was surprised at how much it changed, actually. Not in a bad way, just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think they're good changes too. So I mean, granted, if you just look at it, it seems like one of the most basic battle systems in RPG history, which it is, to be fair. But that's part of what makes it good, anyway. So yeah. But anyway, different from previous Dragon Quest games, instead of you picking all 4 of your characters' moves at the beginning of the turn and letting their speed stat dictate what order everything goes in, now every time when you take your turn, when you choose an action for a character, they take that action immediately, which changes a lot about the game, in good ways for the most part, because gone are the days when you try to heal someone, but that character dies during that turn, and so your healer chooses one of your other party members to heal at random, and it's the person with full health. You know, like that sort of stuff cannot happen anymore, which is great.
And also, the enemies have always been able to, there's always been a double standard where your actions were all set at the beginning of the turn, but it became very obvious at times that that wasn't the case for the enemies. They got to set their actions immediately before they went, because they could do things like, you know, your character kills enemy A on their turn. Enemy B casts Zing on their turn. It's like, you weren't going to do that before I killed them.
I cast Zing, but I'm already alive. Oh man.
Oh, sorry.
That's a waste of a turn. Yeah, but yeah, so that's gone too. And it's surprising how much that changes. How, like, it's a subtle thing, but you're no longer just, you're allowed. I think it also lets you use buffs more specifically, because you don't feel like you need to cast party-wide buffs as much, because you know that you can cast oomph on just one person before their turn. You know, does that make sense?
And the game also added that you can see the buffs on each character as a little icon next to their portrait. And
oh yeah, that's so
which
good.
is great, because I was the worst about forgetting. Like, wait, did I cast Kabuff once or twice? Or, like, is this person oomphed or not? I don't know. I can't keep track.
Yeah.
And it also blinks a turn or two before that buff is going to wear out.
Oh, yeah, that's so good, because it's always...
You can see, like, if I, okay, like, oomph is about to run out. If I still want oomph on this character, like, that gives me time to try to, like, recast it. Because
there was nothing more annoying in Dragon Quest VII than when you get oomph on someone and then you have them muster strength and then you're about to knuckle sandwich, but oomph wears out on the turn you use knuckle sandwich, you know?
Yep.
So I'm glad it's just those small... I don't know if these quality of life things were introduced in 10 first or whatever, but this is the first time we've seen them, so they're welcome.
And I feel like 10 was also a different battle system because it was an MMO, so
Oh yeah.
even if it
yeah,
was,
so,
even if it did have those little changes, like they're going to play out differently, I think.
I know that a lot of the UI from 10 was used in 11, like the markings next to the spells, with the red little swooshy line meaning attack, and the healing symbol and the status symbol. Those colors and symbols were all pulled from 10, which, I think is good because you know at a glance what this thing's supposed to do.
Yep, it makes it easier to find the thing, like if you're looking for a certain skill quickly once your characters amass a lot of skills, which they do.
Yeah, for sure. But it's never overwhelming, which I think is often the case in 6 and 7. More so 7 than 6. Yeah. Where you have pages and pages and pages of skills. Like, many of them redundant. There's only so many ways you need to cast sleep on someone.
Yep.
So, but it never feels overwhelming, the amount of skills you get in 11. So I appreciate that as well. But the other big change to this game's battle system is pep powers. It's kind of like a limit break system, but not... Well, I mean, it's basically like a limit break system, but with some twists. Sometimes your characters will get pepped up, and they'll kind of glow blue, and they'll go like, rah! And it kind of feels sort of random at the beginning of the game.
It still felt pretty random to me at the end of the game, although maybe I just didn't...
Yeah.
I never felt like I understood, like, how to get... Like, if I wanted a character to get pepped up, what did I need to do in order to get that to happen faster?
Even just a meter below their character portrait would have helped a lot, I think. Because I know that supposedly dealing damage and receiving damage is what builds up your pep. And it feels like getting hit is what builds up your pep more than just dealing damage, because I'll have people like Sylvando in the back dealing massive amounts of damage, from skills like the juggling skill and stuff like that. But it's not until he gets punched in the face really, really hard on the off chance that somebody hits my third party member on my team that he finally gets pepped up, So I feel like it's getting hit puts you more at risk of getting pepped up, because the hero certainly got pepped up way more often than the others, and that was before I got the instant pep up skill, So, and that's because he was at the front of the party. So
yeah, and I think I remember seeing something in the game that mentioned like one of the tips the game gives you that said something along the lines of defending gets you basically if you're in a defensive role you're more likely to get pepped. But what I couldn't tell was like, is it based on number of times you get hit or how much damage you take?
Yeah, because if it's I don't know either. I don't know if anybody's done the data mining to figure it out, now that I'm thinking about it. But because if it's the amount of damage you take as opposed to the amount of times you get hit, having someone in the front of the party and having them defend the whole time is a waste of time in that case,
Yep.
And there are certain quests that require you to do very specific pep powers. So having specific people pepped is important.
There's one boss in sort of an optional quest where you have to...
I know what one you're talking
about.
Yeah,
I won't spoil like what it is because it's very spoiler-tastic, but essentially the goal is there's these two monsters, you have to defeat them both with a pep power, but the pep power only targets one enemy. So you have to do it twice. You have to do it twice, and I was struggling to figure out how do I efficiently get these characters back into pep status.
Unless if you want to burn the pep pops or the very, very rare pep seeds and pep pops you get. Like, you can buy them at end game, but they're ridiculously expensive. So, you don't want to just burn it on that. I guess we should talk about the pep powers, which is because the interesting part of the system.
What I liked, and I feel like this is something you probably liked too, was the sort of trade-off of you can either keep your pep state for X number of turns, or you can use a pep power.
Yeah, which I think is very interesting, because keeping your characters pepped can be very, very useful. Because, for example, they don't just get stat buffs. they happen in special things can happen. Like, for example, Eric, he is your thief character. So he has a chance to, if you use the half-inch ability, you have a chance to steal stuff. Your steal rate is massively increased when you pet up. So you could either blow his load early on a strong attack, because he's got some of the best pet powers in the game, or you can you can wait for a little bit and have him have a much higher steal rate for a while. And there's other things too, like Jade has a way higher critical hit rate when she's pepped up. I think Veronica and Rab have higher critical spell rates when they're pepped up. It's not just like, oh, their attack's better for most of the time.
Yes, and it's specific to each character what attributes are boosted. Like, it would, you know, if Veronica's attack went up when she was pepped, it would be like, oh, whoop-de-doo.
Thanks.
The mage can hit things harder. She can do 10 damage instead of 8. Wow.
It's like, it's always useful stuff.
Yes.
Like Serena, she's your healer. She gets increased magical mending, so she can heal people better.
That's another. You know? That's actually another subtle difference that probably, like, you know, people who aren't DQ fans might not necessarily care about this. But in DQ, there's traditionally been one magic stat. In this game, they divided the magic into magical mending and magical might. If your character has a higher magical mending stat, they'll heal more with like healing spells. They'll have a higher chance of resurrecting someone or resurrect someone with more health. And if they have more magical might, they do more damage with offensive spells. What did you think of that?
And I liked it because it's always been really, really inconsistent in terms of magic. Like, there was always wisdom, which always had really inconsistent stuff. Like, in some games it increased damage, some games it increased MP growth. Yep. You know, it's always been vague. So having it be firm is really, really good. Another thing that I liked is that I think they got rid of the damage cap on a lot of the offensive spells, or at the very least they greatly increased it. Because you can notice the difference in damage if you have the hero cast Frizz versus Veronica cast Frizz.
Absolutely, you know? I noticed that a lot.
There's a reason to have a mage around. Like, the magic in this game, I think, is really, really good. Part of why I like this game is that every character feels useful, which is hard to do in an RPG, for the record. Most RPGs have at least one character you shunt to the back of the party and you never use ever. So I really like that. The thing I appreciate the most is that it's clear. You know, there's no vague wisdom and intelligence, which one does what stuff going on. It's, okay, magical mending, increased healing. Magical might, increased attack. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. I think we kind of skipped over pet powers, though, which I think are one of the coolest things about the game, personally. Like, if you can get two characters pepped up at the same time, you can get so many cool special moves together, which are kind of the big flashy attacks you might think of when you think of a limit break system. But the cool thing about them is that most of them are not just do a lot of damage. Most of them are really, really unique attributes that can give you a serious leg up on the enemy if you know what you're doing, which is really cool. Like, for example, one of them that you'll discover fairly early lets Eric take 2 turns per turn, which is insanely broken if you combine that with his divide skill.
Wait, you mean wait, 2 turns per turn?
So, you know the Call of the Wild skill?
Oh, like, yes, that pet power, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so each of his turns, he gets to take 2 actions. Yep. Is probably a better way for me to say.
Yes, yeah.
So that allows him to basically divide and then attack each turn, you know, which is ridiculously good. There's one that puts metal monsters to sleep. There's one that can instantly oomph everybody. You know, and there are the ones that just do a lot of damage too. But the fact that they have so many varied and interesting effects is part of why I really like the system, and also the animations are just so good. You know, like I'm sure Electrolyte is probably a highlight for you, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes, definitely.
With how much you used it, I'm imagining. Did you even You got level 99 on everyone before the final boss, right?
Not
the
everyone.
True final boss?
No, no.
Not
Not
everyone?
quite
Okay. Was Serena, like, your last person?
Yeah, I'm actually grinding right now. I'm farming drops right now. Like
Yeah.
seals drops. And but I had like probably half my party at level 99. The final boss was still not a pushover though. I would like to
No,
say.
no, the final boss, the true final boss is not a pushover at all. But yeah, the game is very, the electrolyte, I'll probably play some footage of it now because I have did you take screenshots and video captures of your playthrough?
I took a few
While you were
screenshots,
playing?
yeah.
Okay, send me those so that I can put them in editing.
Okay.
Afterwards. Anyway, but yeah, they're so good. Like, Electrolyte's animation is just amazing. A lot of them are kind of bizarre, like Eric turning into a werewolf for no reason.
Never
alright,
explained.
Sure.
For the
No,
record.
no. But it's fine. Don't worry about it. And some of my favorites are spoilery, so I'm not gonna go into them. But it's just I think the pet power system is good. It would be great if getting into pep was at least easier to track, because if there was just a simple meter at the bottom of the screen that indicated how much you have to go and how much each action filled up the pep meter, it would feel a lot better, It's like if you got rid of the limit break meter in Final Fantasy VII, limit breaks would not make nearly as much sense and wouldn't feel as useful,
Yes. Yeah.
even if the mechanics otherwise were exactly the same.
Yep.
So, yeah. So I think we all agree on that. So I think the only other major thing gameplay-wise that we haven't touched on really is the upgrade system, which I personally think is extraordinarily well done.
Yes.
Personally.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as it's an RPG, you battle, you level up and whatnot. You gain experience, and you will learn skills as you level up. Like, you will learn some new spells, mostly, and a couple of other assorted things you will learn. But most of your really cool skills are ones you learn on the skill grid, which is the sphere grid from Final Fantasy X, but good, pretty much.
But an actual grid instead of being
linear,
largely linear masquerading as a grid.
Yeah, so one of the cool things about it is that most of the time when your character starts off, you've got like the starting point in the center of their grid, and it will shoot off in 3 or 4 different directions. The hero, for example, you can choose to either increase the hero's sword skills, great sword skills, or luminary skills. And you can spend the skill points you get when you level up on the types of skills you want to learn. So if you want to learn the standard sword skills, you go to the swords branch. If you want to learn the great sword skills, you go to the great sword branch, etc. And at first this sounds really standard, and it is, but it's just the way the grids are laid out is really, really well done, in that in order to get some of the best skills, you have to unlock enough skills next to them, like adjacent to the question mark ones, in order to open it up, and then you can unlock the really good skills underneath, because most of the time they're really, really, the ones underneath the secret panels are pretty expensive. So it always feels like putting your skill points into stuff feels like you're making a really smart choice. It's like, okay, I could blow all of my skill points on minor stat upgrades now, but if I wait a level or 2 in order to have the 20 skill points I need to get, say, this next upgrade on the spell, then I'll be better off. Which should I go for? And there's a lot of decision making there that it feels really satisfying when you come to, like, when you finally do get those skills you've been aiming for. And one other thing that I really like is the ability to reallocate Did you ever reallocate your skills at all?
I did a little bit once. But yeah,
Okay.
It wasn't something I did a lot. It's just, I had a plan.
You see, because I actually, the first half of the game, I barely did it at all. Like, I almost never did. But once I got to endgame, I was doing it all over the place because not only did I just want to try different things, I wanted to, like, go through the skill grid to get to the things that I used the most and get rid of the skills I found myself not actually using all that much. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like for Rab, for example, it's just like, okay, I'm not actually using a lot of these skills. I'm going to reallocate those and put them into stuff that I'm actually going to get some use out of, you know? And one of the great things about reallocating is that it's so cheap that you can do it whenever, like, you're stuck and you want to change something up for a new strategy. It's not like you have it's a great option to have. You know, you're never stuck into one path. Like, because I don't think that's often an option in a lot of RPGs, and many of them...
Wasn't an option in DQ8.
Yeah. Oh, DQ8. Oh, man. Because that's the other thing about the old skill point system is that in DQ8, you didn't even know what skills you would be getting if you put your skill points into that section. Like, okay, I'm going to get sword skills. What does that mean?
How would you know?
You know?
Like, I would never have guessed in a million years that the way to get magic burst for Jessica was putting points into fisticuffs.
Yeah, exactly,
like,
you know.
But it is. In the 3DS remake, they let you see what skill you were getting, at least.
Yeah.
But in the original,
that's
you couldn't.
true.
In this one, you can see exactly what you're getting, and it even tells you if, like, you're unlocking a pet power or a component of a pet power.
Yeah. And the skill grids evolve too as the game goes on, which is also really great. So, you know, when you find yourself with a bunch of skill points and a whole bunch of new skills to unlock, it's just the best feeling in the world, you know. So, it is so good. But yeah, I think... Oh, forging!
Yes.
I completely forgot about forging. That's like the last gameplay mechanic we haven't really touched on.
I spent so much
like,
time with that damn forge.
It's like the best part of the game. I remember when you first... I remember when we first started off, you didn't get how it was supposed to work.
No, the game, I don't know if the game didn't explain it well or I wasn't paying attention. The game definitely, like, gives you a very bare bones explanation. I will say it gives you a bare bones explanation, and I will say forging is one of those things that, like, kind of like old school DQ games, at first, it's really, like, hard to do what you want and get the result you want. But as you move on, like, you get more skills and you essentially level up in forging, and it gets less frustrating. It feels less like you're doing things at random and praying it doesn't go over, like, the sweet spot. Because that was what was frustrating to me, was, like, basically you have materials and recipes to forge things. The recipes you find in like, you either are given them or you can find them in the overworld or in towns and such. And you forge things by, like, you hit them with a hammer. And there's essentially a meter, and you want to be in a certain sweet spot on that meter. Early on, you have one strength of hitting things. So sometimes it felt like it was completely up to luck whether it was even possible for you to get in that sweet spot. Because there were times early on where it's like, I'm either going to be short or I'm going to go over. And there was nothing you could do about it. Later on, you don't have that problem.
It definitely gets easier as you go, I agree. I think I probably had an easier time than maybe some other people did because I watch far too much stuff about blacksmithing on, like, YouTube and on the History Channel and stuff like that. So I'm not that I'm an expert or anything like that, but I know some things that maybe some people who don't know a thing about smithing or forging don't. Like, for example, if you hit something at a higher temperature, it will move more than if you hit it at a lower temperature, which is part of getting really good gear in the late game. Is you got to raise up the temperature in order to move the meters more, and then you got to lower the temperature in order to move them less to get precise strikes. I agree that early on, it's hard to get +3 equipment because you're just kind of hoping and praying that you hit the stuff in the right order, you know. But I'd say, like, as soon as you unlock, like, a handful of skills, which is around the time you get, like, Veronica and Serena, who are the third and fourth party members of the game. So around the time when you get a full party and you actually kind of need to forge stuff because money's too tight to buy it all, I think that you have what you need in order to do it. It takes some time to get used to, I will take that, but once you get into it, I found it far more engaging than the Alchemy Pot from Dragon Quest VIII and IX.
Yeah,
personally.
I would agree. Once you get the hang of the minigame, it's a lot of fun.
Because there's that tension to it, I think, is the thing. Because the Alchemy Pot just was, you put the stuff in and the thing came out. And, you know...
If you played the 3DS remake, at least you didn't have to run around in circles to cook things.
Yeah, that's also true. But, the trying to get the +3... Because it puts a little star on in your guidebook.
So I wasn't the only one who was anal about reforging things to get the +3?
Oh man, even if you're going to spend all your Perfectionist Pearls
by the end of the game, I have like 500 Perfectionist Pearls by now.
Yeah, but reforging the high-level stuff costs like 40. So, you know, it's especially when you've got 7 party members that you want to reforge like half of their equipment. You run out pretty quickly, and you can straight up buy them, but they're expensive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's such a it's such a good glue that holds a lot of the game together because it allows I never really found that the finding materials was super worth it in a lot of the other 8 specifically. Like 8 was one of the first games to add the other materials that you could find other than just, like, items and weapons and stuff like that. But you need materials to be, like, a small thing that you find frequently, you know, as your reward for exploring. But in Dragon Quest VIII, I never really felt like that was necessary as much because most of the cool stuff you got was either with weapons that you would have found anyway, and with really rare materials that you have to go out of your way to get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. It was also because stealing sucked in DQ8, like just in terms of the stealing rate. It was so much harder to farm things that you needed.
Yeah, whereas stealing in Dragon Quest XI is actually a viable strategy. Who'da thunk? You know, and it's not free. I think is also the thing. Like stealing stuff is a risk. Because in a lot of games, like the first one that comes to mind is, in most Final Fantasy games, stealing's really good because in almost every encounter outside of bosses, it's easy. Like by mid-game, you have a 100% steal rate on almost everything in a lot of the Final Fantasies. Like I remember when I was playing Final Fantasy III, I had a thief for most of the game, and I didn't have to worry about items at all because its steal rate was so good that I got free potions and ethers and stuff from every fight, and it was great. But in Dragon Quest XI, the steal rate, Eric's steal rate it's good, but it's not fantastic unless if you're in Pep. You know, you can't assume you're always going to get an item, and sometimes the items aren't worth stealing either, which made actually looking at your guidebook useful so you can actually figure out what the heck am I stealing here anyway. And also the rare drops are so good in Dragon Quest XI as well. Like you can get some pretty OP shit if you go out of your way to steal it.
Yeah, you can get some great equipment.
Yeah. So if you're having a tough time, spam itemized kill and hope for the best, I guess, because itemized kill, the pet power, transforms your regular steal rate into a rare drop steal rate, and if you fail, you get the normal drop instead. So it's pretty good. But yeah, I loved the forging in this game, and it made everything feel worthwhile, and I'd spend like an hour at camp doing it, and it's just so good.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay, that's an hour and 10 minutes just talking about the gameplay mechanics. That's a good start. Okay. So, before we talk about the plot, which will involve heavily spoiling the game, because there's a lot to speak about, why don't we wrap up what we feel about the general gameplay and how we would try to recommend this game to somebody who doesn't want the story spoiled to them.
I think it's so good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's so good. Like, I really don't know what else to say. I feel like this is an amazing DQ fan. This is an amazing DQ game for existing fans of the series. There's so many, like, references and, you know, like tributes to old DQ games, but also in and of itself, it's a fantastic game. And I think it's a fantastic. If people don't are willing to try a longer DQ game as a starting place, this is totally the one I would recommend. It's a different experience, obviously, because it has so many features. But unlike DQ8, where I felt like it wasn't kind of worth it, I feel like this is worth it.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Like, I think that if you especially like modern RPGs, you know, with big stories, lots of gameplay, lots of stuff to do, you're really gonna love Dragon Quest XI. And, you know, one of the things about Dragon Quest that's great is that while, yes, there are lots of lore callouts for fans and stuff like that, these games are segmented enough that you don't have to know what an Erdrick is in order to enjoy the game, you know? Like, you can enjoy the game on its base merits without having to read 10 Wikipedia articles before you start. So, if you like modern RPGs, I would say, and you have not played Dragon Quest, this is a great game to start off with. Go, have fun, and then watch the rest of this discussion later, because part of why we love this game so much is the story. And we don't want to spoil any of it, because even starting from the very beginning, there are parts that I feel like there are parts that hit so hard, and I don't want to ruin anything for you, you know? Because we've been very vague about the story so far, and that's on purpose. It's too good to talk about if you haven't seen it yet. So, go do it. You owe it to yourself, basically. So, anyway, I'm going to give you all, like, 10 seconds to get the heck out of here before we start talking about the story. And, okay, good. Alright, so anyway, what did you think of the game's beginning?
I thought it was it was a cool start. Like, I wouldn't, it was very, like...
Like, I'd say, well, the opening cutscene is really well done. I'd say, like, starting with, like, the coming-of-age sequence in that dungeon and all that. Like, what did you think about all that
It's
stuff?
a very classic start to a game, and I wouldn't say, like, I felt like, to be honest, I don't think it was, like, incredible or, like, terribly original, but I think it was well done.
Yeah, I agree, but I also think that it feeling classic and standard is part of the point because of what happens immediately after that.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, like, the hero finding out they're the chosen one and that they've got to save the world is, like, not just Dragon Quest, but, that's classic for so many, not even just RPGs, like normal games, like, Legend of Zelda, several Final Fantasies, the list goes on and on and on. And so, like, I think the important thing early on in the game is the characters. That you are immediately attached to the hero, his mom, and Gemma early on, I think is the most important part.
Yeah, the mom's
of the
pretty
beginnings.
Great.
Mom's so good. She loves you so much, and she believes in you. Oh man, it's oh god. We'll talk about her more, I'm sure, as we go on. But Gemma, what do you think of Gemma? Because
I didn't like her as much as the game wanted me to like her, but I didn't dislike her.
Same. I mean, she's developed enough. I think the problem is that she's not really that important, I think. So she's supposed to be like your tie to your hometown is the big thing.
She's supposed to be Bianca. But she doesn't join my party.
Yeah, I think you don't get to have the emotional connection to her that I think the game kind of expects you to have, because she's supposed to be your best friend and the girl that you grow up with and whatnot. But you only know her for a little bit before you go on and do the main story. So, like, I mean, she's cute and it's clear that she cares about you, and it is pretty touching in the scene where like it's clear that she really, really, really doesn't want you to
Yeah.
go. Like that's a bit of a heartbreaker.
I
there,
really like.
but,
I thought that was well done. I was just like,
yeah.
sorry, babe. I feel for you, but gotta go.
I'm my own man. I can't be tied down to no cobblestone, you know. So yeah. So I agree, and I mean, I guess there's just not that much to talk about. The scene with the lightning strike on the Hell Condor is really cool, though. I will say.
Yeah.
That's really cool. The lightning, like how powerful the lightning is in this game, like really, really shines through. Like that's one of my favorite visual effects, especially considering that Zap is a kick-ass spell in Dragon Quest XI.
Yes.
As well too. Like that's awesome. But anyway, you're thinking like la-di-da, standard Dragon Quest stuff. You leave the town, you go to the overworld, you ride your horsey. JonTron teaches you how to make camp, the basics. And then you get to Heliodor, which is the first major town in the game. And, okay, so one minor complaint that's going to not sound like a complaint. The towns are too big and too good.
Yeah, it took me so long to explore a town. It'd be like an hour.
Like, I mean, granted, the towns are really well made and put together. It's just that I'm the kind of guy who needs to find every barrel and break every barrel, because there's mini medals in there, man. So, yeah.
Yeah, I spent, I put a stupid number of hours into this game, and yeah, like it takes a lot of time to like explore a town, but they also really lived in, and that's super cool. So.
Yeah, the towns are really well done. It's just, in Dragon Quest tradition, they're kind of laid out weirdly, so getting to know your bearings takes a bit, I guess is the thing. Which is more pronounced when you're playing a big HD version, if that makes sense. I'm sure that if you're playing the 16-bit version, navigating the towns doesn't feel like it takes quite so long a lot of the time. So, yeah, minor complaint. But anyway, you explore Heliodor, you're told to go see the king, and you hear all about how great King Carnelian is, and how great his generals Hendrik and Jasper are. And, they're gonna help you, stop the darkness,
you got a letter from your grandpa saying, go see the king, he'll help you out. You're like, yeah, okay, and, Grandpa knows best.
Yeah. Yeah, dead Grandpa Chalky knows what to do. He saved us from a river, so he knows what's up. So yeah, we go to see the king, and they're like, oh, hi, you're the the traveler. Oh, hi, it's great to see you. All right, why don't you go talk to oh, no, now I'm in jail. Oh, that's, dude, the scene where you get thrown into jail is so good. Like, where the king is just kind of dicking with you by talking about how great it is that you've come in and whatnot, and you think, because that's actually how quite a few of the early Dragon Quests start, is you're talking to the king, and they're like, go do the thing, here's 50 gold, have fun. Because, like, 1, 2, 3, 4 all start like that. 5 doesn't. You do get that scene eventually in 6, but not for a good long distance into it.
It happens in 7. Sort of.
7, yeah.
You go chat with the king. He's a little like, with my son, please stop running off. But
I mean, I guess it technically happens in 8 too, even if the king is a little green turd. So yeah, but basically it's just, you expect to be handed 50 gold and a stick and then have to go and buy your own damn equipment and go save the world, And instead he throws you in jail like a douchebag, So, oh man, King Carnelian, and I've talked about them plenty already, but they're such good villains because, like, you have no idea what their deal is, but they're out to get you and they want blood, basically, Like, and it's clear that they're not going to stop at anything to get you thrown back into that cell and then probably executed, Yeah. So, yeah, and it makes them feel really threatening and really present in a way that a lot of Dragon Quest villains aren't,
Yes.
Because we've talked about this a lot before, whereas many Dragon Quest games have a villain problem in that it doesn't feel like there is one for a good amount of time. Whereas right from the start in Dragon Quest XI, you have these very persistent, very powerful, and very emotionally interesting enemies that are just out to get you, and you're not even sure why, you know? Because you're not a darkspawn, right?
My mom thinks I'm cool.
Yeah, but your mom's dead now, so you know.
Oh.
They burned down your town. Sorry about that.
Oh.
So anyway, you're thrown into jail, and then you're asked to join a prison gang with Eric. So you know that's pretty cool. We got tattoos and everything. Nice. Yeah. So the scene sneaking around the dungeon with Eric, I thought was a really cool scene personally. I mean, you don't know he's Eric then, but we'll just call him that because that's his name.
Hooded mysterious man, or hooded man, I think they call him. Hooded stranger.
Did you bother trying to do stealth when you were walking around the dungeon? Or
I tried.
Did you just...
I think I screwed up a couple times, but I didn't do like that badly, I think.
Well, the soldiers aren't that hard, so it's not a huge, and it's certainly not as annoying of a stealth section as Dragon Quest VI's stealth section is. So you know, that's helpful.
But
yeah. And then there's also the dragon chase, which is really cool. And they also tease you by putting a metal slime there.
Oh
as well,
man, that was so mean.
It was so. I mean, the fun thing is that you can stop and attack the enemies that are walking around in that section that are running away from the dragon.
Oh wow.
Yeah, you can, because I ran into one of them by accident, and it says a slime draws near, and there's the dragon right next to them. And I'm pretty sure you can actually try to fight the dragon, but if you do, you die.
Yeah.
So, you know, I wouldn't recommend doing that personally. I wonder what happens.
To level 99 before that whole sequence.
I wonder what happens if you do that. Like, I would feel bad for the person who has to do 50 million fights with a random blue slime in order to get, you know, the experience you need to do that. But I kind of want to see it, you know? Because you don't have to be that high level to beat the black dragon. Like, you can beat it by level 40.
Yeah.
Well, no, like 33 is when is what you're around when you end up fighting it later in the game anyway.
Yeah.
So you could definitely beat it, but it's probably just a set fight anyway. But you know, anyway. So that's our first introduction to Eric, who is everyone's favorite yaoi pairing, and just a general bro-tastic dude.
He's a good bro. He's a real.
He's a
bro.
good. How does he rank on your Dragon Quest bro ranking list?
Oh, I don't know. He's probably like. I feel like he's best bro because he helps us, but also we help him. And that's like true broness, I feel like.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like Yangus is a pretty good bro, and you help him too. But
Yeah, but not as much.
That's true, because Yangus stops being important after the first 10 hours. So yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And also, I like his story a lot, is the big thing. Like he's got a dark and troubled past, but he's not either incredibly depressing about it or a big asshole about it, you know? Like, he trusts you, I think, is the big thing. And that means a lot in a game, especially a game like this, you know? Where you feel like your companions actually do care about you in a lot of the ways.
Yes.
Like, yeah, So Eric is, in character-wise, he's one of my favorites. And he's also good at the beginning of the game and ridiculous by the end, battle-wise, because oh my god, his later skills are insane. He can divide himself into 3 copies to triple his damage. His boomerang skills can decrease enemy resistance to ailments, which you can then put on them with his knives. Oh yeah, and he can instant crit enemies on command.
Yep.
I mean, granted, it costs like a third of his MP to do that, but Metal King Slimes will never run away from you ever again.
It doesn't matter if it costs.
Basically.
I found out like it doesn't really matter if it costs that much of his MP. If you're like, because if you're, when I was using it, it was with liquid metals or Metal King Slimes, It was like, I was gonna level up anyways. It's enough MP, you're gonna get the level up, so,
Yeah, that's a good that's a good point. And also, like we touched on this earlier, the fact that his stealing is good for once is such a nice change of place for Dragon Quest, because usually stealing blows. Like, in the old games, it's like stealing is just having a higher drop rate, and in Dragon Quest VIII, it's awful, because you're wasting a turn in order to get the 1 in 64 drop rate the thing normally has anyway, so thanks for that game. Like, I appreciate
so
that.
low in DQVIII.
It was so bad in Dragon Quest VIII. But yeah, so you then so after you and Eric escape from the dungeon, which is a really cool sequence, you then fall down a waterfall and you should die, but you don't because it's a video game. And he's like, "Man, that was hard. Anyway, I gotta go back into town and get my stuff. You want to come with?"
Yep. He's like, I left some stuff. Let's go back into town.
And I mean, granted, it's important stuff because there's a red marble back there that he left, and that's probably important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he left it in the garbage where you leave those kinds of things.
It's gonna be there, right? Right.
Yeah. So the scene with him and Dirk, because you find out that his friend Dirk took the marble and sold it to
go straight.
to start his own
he
shop.
Went straight.
Yeah.
Eric didn't go straight.
Anyway, what was really touching is that Eric's first thought when the marble went missing is, "God damn it, Dirk, you betrayed me," basically. Yep. And I think that now that I'm thinking about it, like, it really goes to show, like, the plot points about Eric later in the game where it's different for him to trust the hero so much because he's used to a life where the people who he cares about are leave him, or they just are mean to him, you know, like when we learn more about his backstory. So, like, not that I doubt that he actually cared about Dirk before the game started, but like of course somebody would end up betraying me kind of mindset kind of goes to show, like, how depressing of a life Eric really ended up having, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And you can you get a nice view into Eric's world because when he takes you back into, like, the slums of Heliodor, it's this very, like, downtrodden area.
Like, it's like Pick'em from Dragon Quest VIII as well. It feels an awful lot like. And I also like that there's this downtrodden lower class to Heliodor as well, because, you know, like, the Heliodor you're supposed to see is the one that the king wants you to see is the one you walk into at the beginning of the game. But there is also a very real crappy Heliodor that they're not doing anything to help, and B, going out of their way to make worse, like, because people just aren't allowed to leave unless if you bribe the guardsmen, you know, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I like that a lot. And, you know, Eric, like, having to believe that Dirk actually wasn't trying to betray him, I also thought was a minor thing, but a really well done scene as well, you know. Yeah, so, after that we go through the Mangle Grove, which, would you consider the Mangle Grove a dungeon or not? Because there's a lot of areas that kind of in the game that are overworld areas that kind of feel like dungeons, but not really.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I don't know how I would classify it. Yeah, you're right. It's sort of this weird in between of, it feels like a dungeon when you're going through it, but then it's really just sort of like overworld in some ways.
Yeah, and there's a lot of areas like that in the game as well. Like the Eerie is one of them that we go through later. There's the cavey area where you get the birdsong nectar. I think also kind of feels like that as well. There's a few others.
The sands,
the mountain,
the sands above Gallipolis, that whole area.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that one too. But anyway, you go through the mango grove and you find a tree and you touch it and you get to see into the past. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
A guy got turned into a dog,
Yes.
which that's sad. That tricksy devil is very tricksy and mean. He's also just kind of being a dick too. Like he doesn't have anything to do with anything, which I like in RPGs.
Yeah.
For the most part, where not everything's connected to the plot and there's just a monster being a douchebag sometimes. Like, I like that too.
Yes, yeah. There's a decent bit of that in the game.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And then, after you get through the Mango Grove and you stop by Cobblestone, that's, I think, where the game, like, hits you hard for the first time, and then the game just keeps on getting better and better and better from that point. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say that was when the game really kicked it up in terms of intensity.
Because you go back to Cobblestone, and surprisingly enough, everything's fine, But, like, nothing's burned down or anything, which you think would have happened, because the king sent Jasper there to do bad crap to the town. But, but nobody recognizes you. That's weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you're trying to walk around, and then you see Baby You. And not only is he adorable, he talks to you, which is weird, because that's something that Dragon Quest V did as well. But giving the player character a voice of any kind is not common in Dragon Quest, like, at all. Like, the only other... Dragon Quest V and 6 are, as far as I can tell, the only other games to do that at all. And even in 6, it's not technically you that's speaking. But then you get to the scene where you're talking to Grandpa Chalky, and that made me tear up the first time I saw it. Like, I'm not gonna lie. That scene is really, really touching. And it's amazing that they were able to do that, because you don't even properly meet Chalky until that point in the game,
Yep. But I think it's a testament to the voice acting, and maybe it's partly because, like, I think we both lost grandparents, like, and sort of that idea of, like, being able to talk to someone who knew you when you were a kid. Like,
yeah, for sure, but it's just, he cares for you so much, is the big thing. Like, he really, really loves you is the big thing. And so, having someone like that be there for you at that point is just so... It's so touching. And then afterwards, you realize that you were just having a fever dream the entire time, and they actually did destroy Cobblestone. Yeah. So, you get to hate, I mean, granted, not like Dragon Quest hasn't done the destroyed hometown thing before, but you spend so much time there at the beginning of the game, you do get attached to it. And you do wonder, like, what happened to my mom? What happened to Gemma?
Yeah, because
what happened to everything
there is
else?
no bodies, but nobody knows where they are. It's like very ambiguous. Is everyone dead, or are they just gone?
Yeah, and you're not sure, but it gets you to hate the Heliodor soldiers for sure, because they killed your mom.
And exactly, like, there's one person who is responsible. It's Jasper, because the king told him. When you first show up, when the king was still pretending to be nice, the king was like, "Oh, Jasper, why don't you go send, like, convey my gratitude to the people of Cobblestone for raising the dark luminary."
Yeah, and you get to hate Jasper more as you play more of the game, but you actually don't see him specifically again until Gondolia, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gondolia, and we'll talk more about that when we get to that point. But anyway, Eric, you then because you had the fever dream, Chalky told you where to find another letter. So you go to the Emerald Coast and you find it, and you get another letter from him, and you find out you're actually the Prince of Dundrasil. Oh my gosh. Because we can't have a Dragon Quest hero not be a prince of some kind,
or a chosen
I guess,
one,
right? Or a chosen, or both,
yes.
So yeah, so you're the Prince of Dundrasil. Your mommy left you a letter, and you gotta collect all the marbles and save the world. Well, actually, do we know at this point that we're supposed to collect the marbles?
No, we don't. We don't learn that until later. We just are still going. We're just still going after Eric's stuff, or we already got Eric's stuff.
Because they. Yeah, no, you have to go to the King's Barrow to get Eric's stuff, if I remember
Yes.
correctly. And, like, monsters attack it, and that's spoopy. So, yeah. The King's Barrow is very much a tutorial dungeon,
Yes.
because there's, like, no branching paths at all, and you just walk to the bottom and fight the boss and then leave, which is cool, I guess. But yeah, the one gameplay complaint I have with Dragon Quest XI is that the game needed more dungeons, because it feels like we needed like 2 or 3 big ones more. What do you think about
No,
that?
I think that's fair, yeah. But I think, as you sort of said, the game tried to make up for it by having more pseudo dungeons, like these overworld areas that were set up more like dungeons.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, you get Eric's marble back. You fight a boss. Well, not a real boss, but you fight the 2 griffins who are just being dicks down there.
Yeah, early on in this game, there's a lot of like bosses that are just slightly stronger enemies.
Yeah, they don't play the boss music for them, which I mean it's fine, I guess. They certainly feel like harder fights because they are harder fights, but you don't get your first true boss fight until the next dungeon, which is the Cryptic Crypt, and that's when you're doing the quest with Veronica and Serena, which we'll get to. The scene after the King's Barrow, where you're running away from Hendrik and his soldiers, is super tense and awesome. And then you get the shot where you hold hands with Eric as he pulls you onto your horse. It's also very convenient that those 2 horses were there.
Yeah,
as well,
just jump on these horses. But yeah, the menace that Hendrik had when he was chasing you was like,
because he's like almost mad with anger.
he's real mad.
Well,
yeah.
You know what you know what I mean. Like, he was almost crazed trying to get you, because he's like, "You'll never escape me, Darkspawn." You know, where he's like fanatical about
I
catching
said to
you.
Ted once, I was like, can you name the hero Darkspawn? Because I think it'd be really funny to do a playthrough where you name the hero Darkspawn.
I know that there are certain things you can't be named, and they actually patched some of them out. Because at one point, because one of the royals in the game is named Lord Robert, you couldn't name your character Robert.
Oh, really?
Which is a normal ass name. Like, I don't think you can name your character any of the other main characters' names, and I know that if you name your character Erdrick, like Dragon Quest III, a message pops up saying, like, oh, you can't just name yourself something important like that, you know? So, I know that happens. But yeah, I want to try a Darkspawn playthrough. I feel like that'd be great.
Darkspawn playthrough, Draconian Quest, 6 out of 6.
Oh.
He's so shy about being the Darkspawn.
You know, trying to bring darkness to the world, it's an awkward situation. So, then you escape by teleporting to a different region of the map entirely, the Hotto region, which is hot. There's a volcano.
Wow. Hotto.
So, you go and you have a nice, steamy, relaxing time with Eric.
Yes,
You know,
you
get
go
rid
in
of your
and talk
stress.
with her. You can also get an accolade in game for walking into the women's bath.
Oh man, yeah. Did you do that?
Yes.
You see, I got it just by trying to explore and find the hidden stuff that they definitely... Like, the woman... Like, I didn't think that they would even let you go into the women's section, so the lady yells at you, and then she's like, okay, I found everything, and I walk out the women's
that's
aisle.
Yeah, you can't walk in the women's section. You have to go. You have to, like, the strats are serious. You have to go in the men's section and, like, they connect though, so you can walk out the women's section. And she gets real mad.
Yeah, she kicks you out, but it's okay. You can come back in, and you're fine.
Yeah, she forgets.
And you don't have to pay anything either to go to the sauna, which is also nice. The economy there is, must be doing pretty well for them to not charge for their main attraction, but whatever. And then you also meet this sassy little girl. Like, what a sass bucket that girl is, with her red outfit and, and being all like, oh, you're the one I'm looking for. and then yelling at Eric and calling him doofus
And
and
looking
all
for
that
her
stuff.
her little sister. Excuse me.
Yeah, her little sister, yeah. And she also wants to go to the bar and get drunk. Like, oh my gosh, you're like 5. You can't go to the bar. Jeez, man. So, shenanigans happen, and then she says, yo, I'm Veronica, help me find my sister. And so she joins the party, and so whenever you get a new party member in the game, they don't join your team right away. They follow behind you and are AI controlled for a little while.
But they're also invincibly AI controlled, which makes it fun. Versus Millie joining your party in the DS version DQ6, where she had finite MP and would spend it on Kabuff every single battle.
One thing that I also think is cool is that it teaches you how to use some of the characters that are a little bit more obscure. Like, for example, when we get to Sylvando later on in the game, he'll use some of the less traditional skills, like the fire breath and whatnot, to show you that, okay, maybe you don't just need to mash the attack button with this character, you know?
I think there's a battle, there's some encounter you run into while Sylvando's AI controlled that can confuse your party members, and he will use, the AI controlled Sylvando will use Sobering Slap, which is he can get someone out of confusion or infatuation status. And I was like,
I don't think I ever had that happen to me, so that's also really cool to
I think
know
that happened,
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And the thing about Veronica though is that she's got the big mage stick, but she doesn't do any spells. She just whacks people with it, and then gives you free MP things and medical herbs.
Yeah.
So she's your item mule for the next dungeon.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Because I sort of knew from pre-release stuff why that was the case. Like pre-release spoiler stuff. That, like, okay, why is this clear mage character just hitting things with a stick and using medical herbs on me? But
Yeah, I also really like the dungeon that you go through. The Cryptic Crypt is one of my favorites in the game because there was strategy to avoiding the potholes is the thing. Like, if you looked at the environment and found the Yggdrasil route, then you could learn where the spots where you could fall down are and avoid them, or you could fall into them anyway and get the stuff down there, which if you're a true Dragon Quest player, you do anyway, you know? Like, it's, it felt very similar. There's the dungeon where you get the thing for Red at the beginning of Dragon Quest VIII had a similar feeling.
yeah.
Yeah. And also the boss fight is that's considered the first true boss fight of the game as well, in that area. And that boss fight's not super hard, but it certainly isn't a pushover either. And you have to put in a decent amount of effort in order to fight it and win. So I appreciate that as well.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah. So then we find Serena, who is very much not littler than Veronica. That's weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we find out that they took her magic power, but also the monsters took Veronica's magic power and also her age, which is weird.
Yeah.
But whatever,
I feel like
guess.
Hori or Toriyama didn't want to like do the like similar looking sisters trope again. Because he did that with like DQ4. He had Maya and Mina, who were not twins; they were sisters.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I could understand like not wanting to look like he was totally rehashing that thing.
Yeah. Because the Serena and Veronica's relationship is one of the best in the game. And like the fact that Veronica ends up de-aged doesn't really matter in the course of the story, because you never fix her. She's just small, and she's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm this young now. Cool.
Although she gets,
You know.
she can temporarily become her normal size in one of the pet powers you get later on, I think.
Which is neat, I guess, but it's a weird thing for them to just not worry about. But I think that it's fine, because I think the big thing about it, and one of the genius things that Dragon Quest XI does, and we'll talk about this more probably because we're definitely splitting this into 2 parts, right?
Oh
Oh yeah, okay. Because we'll be talking about this more in the second part. Because one of the genius things Dragon Quest XI does is that it makes you think Veronica's the more important one. Veronica's the one who talks more. She's the one with the cooler spells. Because as useful as the healing and the buffs are, Serena isn't the one throwing fireballs at people, you know? So, yeah. So Veronica's the one with the sassy, witty dialogue. She's the one with the really cute costumes, with her being a kitty cat and that kind of stuff, you know. So you get really attached to Veronica really quickly, and her being short, her being short and turned into a kid also makes her seem like the different one, whereas Serena is the normal one, you know. And why that's so important, I think, really matters when we get to the second part of the game, but we'll talk about that more when we get to it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so anyway, they're like, oh, yo, you're the luminary. We're gonna, like, help you find your marbles. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, so, I love Serena and Veronica. They're just such a joy to have in your party at all times, you know?
Yes. No, they're definitely cool party members, and I think like the contrast between them is what made them like. Without Veronica, Serena would have been like boring.
Yeah.
But with Veronica there, she was like the cool-headed one.
Yeah. Because like Veronica just does not have a good plan like ever. All of the time, she just starts shouting at... Like, there's several points in the game where she just starts shouting at people for no reason. And you're like, we're trying to keep a low profile here.
Yeah.
You know? So... Yeah,
she also, though, like, I feel like says what you kind of want to say sometimes.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Especially in Gallopolis, like, she, like, calls people on their BS. And you're like, yeah! Because the hero's just, you know... quiet about it.
Silent.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, so they join your team, which is cool. You then go to Gallopolis because you need to find a stick that tells you where the marbles are, basically. So, you travel down to there. It's the desert region, which is actually... Like, I actually like the desert region in a video game for once, which never happens. Ever. So that's a nice change of pace to actually enjoy the desert region, you know. And it's partly because I think that this is the point where you start to kind of get into the rhythm. Because Dragon Quest XI, differently from a lot of other Dragon Quest games, doesn't do as much, has a much more ongoing story. A lot of the times, that's not really a major thing in Dragon Quest games. The ongoing story takes a backseat immediately to these vignettes that happen as you go from town to town. Mm-hmm. And when you get to Gallopolis, that's when you seem to kind of get to that first vignette where you have Prince Ferris, who is the cowardly prince who's pretending to be a hotshot to impress his dad, but he just wants nothing to do with all the dangerous things they keep asking him to do.
Yeah.
Know? And that's a classic Dragon Quest style vignette area, you know. And so it's this point where the game kind of feels like it's going to fall into that rhythm of vignettes, vignette stories, which I also think the game kind of subtly subverts later on as well. But Gallopolis, yeah, I think in terms of the vignettes in this game, Gallopolis is probably my favorite. I'd say tied with Honolulu. Honolulu, sorry. Oh, I just realized the pun.
Yeah, seriously?
Yeah. Tied with Honolulu, which you know why if you've played the game. Gallopolis is probably my favorite.
Yeah, I liked Gallopolis. Let me think. Which other ones did I like?
There was Gallopolis.
Gondolia, I didn't care that much about.
Gondolia, and then the only other major vignette before
in the first half
happens,
of the game, yeah.
Yeah, is
Sniffleheim. Sniffleheim, I thought was kind of cool.
Sniffleheim and Sniffleheim and what's the other one? God damn it. The one with the mural.
Phenomenon.
Yeah, Phenomenon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's not as many before plot happens, you know. So yeah, I love Prince Ferris as a character. because there's shades. If you played Dragon Quest VIII, you remember Prince Charmels. And there's shades of that, but it's allowed to be funny as opposed to disgusting.
Yeah.
In this instance, because some of the stuff for Prince Charmels is played for humor in Dragon Quest VIII, but you're really just end up feeling disgusted at that character. Like, he's just a waste of breath.
And because he's gonna marry Medea, and you're like, oh gosh, no.
Whereas Ferris, while he is a lazy oaf and a dumbass, he's not a bad person, is the thing.
Yeah, there's a degree to which characters in the game acknowledge, like, his parents have sort of set really high expectations for him, and he's sort of made this, like, house of cards for himself, where he has to be this thing that he can't be.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of, he just really doesn't want to disappoint anybody, which is relatable,
Yep.
And you can laugh at him for, how he's pretending to be, high and mighty at one point and then turns around and literally begs for you to help him after. But, so did you do the but thou must when he asks you to help him fight the Slayer of the Sands?
Yeah, he gets really
like, he'll slam the ground 3 more times every time you say no.
He gets so agitated. I remember being like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, and it's so good. And then also, because the first thing that he wants you to do is to pretend to be him for the horse race, so that he doesn't have to do it because he doesn't know how to ride a horse. And it's like a big coming of age thing for the prince. And you say yes, and you do it. And, oh, look, that carnival guy joined the race too. Isn't that fun? Right?
He was good.
Yeah, he was really good. And, oh, how do you feel about the horsey game, Qatherine?
I suck at it. I was really bad at it.
You just need to drift your horse better, because that's a thing you can do.
I was really bad. I managed to beat all the easy ones, but I still haven't beaten the hard ones.
Did you grease your horse's horseshoes? Did you soup up the engine?
The turn signal's broken. People keep cutting me off when I'm trying to change lanes.
Oh, man. Traffic in this part of Gallipolis is just terrible at this time of day, Like, jeez. Yeah, but the horse racing minigame I honestly think is pretty fun. Like, I like having a minigame like that in these kinds of things. There are certainly worse ones I played in RPGs,
Oh yeah, I think it's a fine minigame. I just suck at racing games, so.
Yeah. So after you beat the horse racing minigame, then they say, oh no, this monster is attacking. Prince Ferris, go stop it, right? And then you have to babysit him as you go do that. And the mysterious Sylvando, who is the circus entertainer, comes to join you. And sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place with the plot synopsis, but the prince asks you for help initially in the circus so that nobody will hear what's going on, but Sylvando hears the conversation. So he joins the race in order to sabotage your plan at first. And then afterwards, he wants to help fight the Slayer of the Sands because the prince will probably die and he'd feel bad. So he goes and helps you there. And after, of course, you fight the Slayer of the Sands and not him, because of course, what kind of game do you think this is?
Yeah.
Sylvando's the one who ends up tying him up nice and tight. And I love that screenshot. Now we'll teach you to be so naughty.
I also want to comment on how Sylvando calls the prince Princey Poo all the time.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll talk about Sylvando in a second when we get him in our party, because like one of my favorite scenes in the game is when they bring the Slayer of the Sands back, and the prince is like, "I did it! Look at me, I'm awesome!" And then the thing breaks free, like immediately. And I think what Sylvando, it's implied that Sylvando, it's either implied or outright stated, I don't really remember, that he kind of like left the lock undone or the chains loose so that it could break out on purpose. so that the prince would either be able to kind of put up or shut up, like see if he actually had the balls to try to fight it when it was important,
Yep.
which is a cool, like, especially when Sylvando like does the Knight's Oath, shouting at him and whatnot. I thought that was a touching scene.
Yeah, definitely. And it was another way in which Ferris was distinguished from Charmels, because like Charmels wouldn't have fought it, but Ferris at least like sort of tried to.
I mean, he could. The thing is that it allowed him to stop pretending, I think, is the important thing.
Yeah.
And it's like he could acknowledge that he has a long way to go and actually grow to that point, as opposed to spending all of his energy on keeping up the charade,
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then Sylvando thinks you're cute and joins your party. So, yeah. Sylvando, I think, is probably my favorite character in the game, bar none, actually.
Yeah, it's either him or Eric for me. I mean, they're both fantastic characters, and I was really impressed with the way the localization handled
Oh,
Sylvando.
same, yeah. Oh, because in Japanese, his name is Sylvia, and he's okay. So he's very clearly written as kind of a camp gay character even in the English version. Like, he's got the gay voice. Like, I'm not going to try to do it because I'll sound like a stereotype and insult people. But you know what I'm talking about, where he's very clearly got a very effeminate side to him. And this is pronounced even more so in the Japanese version, where his name sounds feminine and some of his skills are labeled like maiden. And like it's otome, I think is what it's listed as in Japanese, which I believe translates to something like maiden. And I think he like specifically refers to himself as one of the girls at one point. So I think you and I both were worried about how they were going to localize him, right? Like, how much of that were they going to try to smooth over? And honestly, what I'm really happy about is that it didn't seem like they didn't seem like they tried to censor anything, and it also came across as really well done without feeling offensive,
Yes.
Like, that could have been very, a different voice actor or a slightly different direction in writing his translated dialogue could have made him feel like a terrible stereotype out of like a 90s movie or game,
Yes.
with the really poorly written gay character. And it's not even like he's canonically gay or anything, because he doesn't show any romantic interest in any of the male characters, or at least aside from teasing them, But it's clearly what they're going for, and a plot point later on in the game is certainly a metaphor for coming out of the closet.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
But he's so well done is the thing. Like, his dialogue is so good. Oh man, like, I'm not even explaining why he's good. I'm just babbling at this point. You do it instead of me.
Yeah, I think it just felt like he was a character and not a stereotype of like, it didn't feel like he was just there to be a stereotype of like a gay flamboyant man. He was a character that like was flamboyant, but that was just who he was. And he had his like deep moments. He wasn't just comic relief character.
Yeah, he could be like, I mean, he definitely does have funny lines, but he also has some of the most serious. He has some very serious moments at different points. He's related to not like physically. Well, he is physically related to other characters. I'm going into. He's connected to the main plot, and he's not just a comic relief character who's there to be silly, I think is the big thing. He's given some of the most emotional depth out of all the characters, because his big thing is he wants to bring happiness to the world, and that's what he was trying to do with his circus performing. And he's trying to do that in saving the world, because if the world gets destroyed, then I guess people aren't going to be able to smile then at that point, right?
Yep.
So, makes sense. Seems legit. But, he has his own fears and insecurities, and and whatnot, and so it makes him feel really well-rounded and well fleshed out. One of the most fleshed out characters in the game, I would say, in total. And I think one thing that also really helps in this game, as opposed to some other Dragon Quest games, is that all of the characters feel like they have relationships with each other and not just with the main hero.
Yes.
Like, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Like, not every character with every other character, but like Sylvando has a certain relationship with Veronica.
Yeah.
And to an extent with Eric. Eric has a certain relationship with like Veronica.
Yeah, because it's not like Rab and Sylvando ever really have a lot of emotional time together, or whatnot. But like, there's connections between lots of them, and you know how they feel about each other. Whereas, like, Dragon Quest VI and 7's a little bit better about this because the cast is so small. 8 too, but especially I'd say like 6 and even kind of 5 and 4 to some extent. You don't get a great idea of how the characters interact, So I really like that, Sylvando enjoys teasing Eric because Eric is not comfortable with how flamboyant Sylvando is. And Eric also doesn't trust Sylvando either because he's got some sketchy elements to him. Like, how does he know all that night crap?
Yeah, because Sylvando definitely, you can tell he's hiding things, but you really don't know why for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, he's so good. I love Sylvando in this. I would say he's my favorite character, easy. And that's not, like, the fact that I'm saying he's my favorite character easy just goes to show how much I love him because I love the entire cast, So, yeah. Anyway, after we get Sylvando, he has the ship, right? And so
we're going to go get the ship, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to go get the ship. So we go to Gondolia next,
if
I remember correctly.
Stop,
yeah. So, one thing I love about Gondolia is they're talking about this manliness contest, Mr. Universe or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I love what they did with that because it's just like, okay, you see them. And it's just like, okay, there's the Mr. Universe pageant going on. And you're just like, okay, we're entering that, right? No. Like, I wonder what that's going to be like. And you actually don't end up doing it because other stuff, because you think that that's going to be like one of the little vignettes that they're going to have you do. Is like, oh, they're going to have stuff happen and hijinks at this Mr. Universe pageant, but instead actual plot happens.
Yeah,
related to
happens.
Heliodor.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about there was this whole thing that looked like it was a setup for some kind of contest, and then nope.
Yeah, because there is some stuff with like a kid who lost his voice, so you go through a mini dungeon and get the water in order to fix that. But as soon as you get back, turns out the mayor called the cops on you like a narc, the jerk, and you get surrounded, and Eric gets captured, and you have to go and sneak around the town and then go save him, which is a really, really cool, and also one of the only parts of the game that I felt was really challenging as well. Did you die to the Jasper boss fight?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay, because I did. Actually, I died to Jasper. I was a little unlucky because I think someone died and then Serena couldn't revive them, and then things snowballed from there.
Gotcha.
But he's not easy for sure, and like having the whole town out to get you was also like a scary kind of thing as well, because as soon as the Heliodor troops get in there, none of the townspeople trust you anymore, which is also like a really effective sort of thing as well. And they also capture your bro, and you gotta save him.
Yes.
How did you handle not being able to have Eric on your team?
I had to rescue him.
Okay. Yeah, but emotionally, like, were you able to handle it?
It fueled my rage. That was why I beat Jasper on my first try. I was upset.
Because you're more committed to Eric than I am.
I'm more committed
apparently?
to Eric, yeah.
Okay.
You said Sylvando was your favorite character. I had a harder time answering that.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to think. Okay, yeah, but Jasper is like such a maniacal douchebag.
Yeah,
Like,
he was. I mean, he was a tough fight. Yeah, I'm not gonna like act like it wasn't a tough fight. I just managed
like,
to beat him first
I'm not
try.
even just talking about the boss fight. Like, just like his arrogance. I think his arrogance and his skill really came through. Because like he just straight up outmaneuvers you for so much of it, and the only reason why you're able to get away in the end is because he's arrogant enough to think that he doesn't need to chase you down when he's got a giant squid to do the work for
Yeah,
him. You know?
he's got this giant monster squid working for him, and I'm like, and you're kind of like, is nobody worried about this? Like,
Well, that's why the townspeople turn on him.
Yes,
is because
yeah.
he was working with the monsters.
because the squid was causing problems for them too.
Yeah. So it's just like if he had like. Also, I kind of wonder if at that point he was letting them get away because you find out later
He's
that
playing
like
a long game.
he's playing a long game. Like, I mean, he certainly could have gotten what he wanted if he captured the heroes then, but it's also part of his goal to let the heroes do a lot of the work for him and just follow them until, and take all the credit for himself, So, but he's the voice acting, I think, sells Jasper because his actor does great work at selling him as this like really really like cool-headed but still like very determined enemy, like he's pissed off at you and he wants to get you, but he's not going to let that get in the way of what he's going to do. Whereas Hendrik, when he's chasing you, he's so fueled up with rage that he's not even thinking at all,
Yep.
And it's such a sharp contrast, and I love it.
Jasper
so much.
also like, to me, I got more malice out of Jasper.
Oh yeah,
like
for
versus Hendrik, it's like very much sort of his aggression towards you is born out of loyalty to his king and this belief that his king, like, my king says this is the darkspawn and is evil and all these other things, so I'm going to do that. Like, I'm going to capture the darkspawn. Whereas Jasper, you get the feeling like he actually just delights in being a terrible person.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because Hendrik always seemed more fanatical, where he's just like, he's doing it because he thinks he's right and he's not listening to reason at all. Whereas Jasper's just like, I'm going to toy with my food before I eat it.
Yep.
And it's different. So yeah, that, and then you get the one of the greatest scenes ever where you ride the ship out of there, which is awesome. I love the salty
Stallion.
the salty spittoon is SpongeBob. How tough? Welcome to the salty stallion. How tough are you? I beat Jasper. Yeah, on my first try. Oh, come on in for this.
But yeah, and I love Dave, the guy.
Dave?
Dave. Oh yeah, it's pronounced Dave.
Because he has the act, and he's the muscle guy with the pink mask. It's great.
He's like Jasper's second in command. Oh, not Jasper's, Sylvando. What am I saying? Yeah, he's Sylvando's second in command.
Oh yeah, and it's we said this before, but the sailing music is straight out of Dragon Quest IV, which has a great sailing theme, so that's also cool. And so did you go straight towards plot, or did you dick around when you first got the ship?
I think I went pretty straight towards plot. I think I went to an island or two, but then I don't think I went all the way to Dundrazil, like the Octagonia Dundrazil area.
So I didn't go past Zwardrust into like explore Dundrasil before doing Octagonia, but I did explore Puerto Valor before going towards plot, and like I messed around in the casino a good amount.
Yeah, I didn't do as
too.
much casino as you, I think.
Yeah, but you also did more grinding than I did, so it's fair. We each have our vices, and that's fine. So, actually, you don't end up doing much in Zwardrust before you get to Octagonia, because this is something lore-wise that you don't really get full answers on until later in the game, but monsters wiped out Zwardrust even before the events in the prologue of the game, and then they destroyed Dundersill, which is your hometown as well. So you just kind of walk through the ruins of a kingdom before you get to Octagonia, which is the next main stop on your list. Because, oh yeah, we forgot to mention this, but you're on a wild goose chase for this stick because you were told that it was in Gallopolis, but they gave it away because they needed money to fund the horse race.
Yep.
Which I thought was pretty funny. And then they sold it to a merchant who then went to Octagonia, I think is what it was. So you end up going that towards Octagonia as well to follow him. So, yeah, once you get there, you find out that it's the martial artist tournament town, and you got to enter the tournament in order to win a marble.
Could you do that before you even went to Port de Valor and got into the Outer Sea?
Do what before you...
do the Octagonia thing? Because...
Oh, you don't get you have to do Octagonia before going into the Outer Sea because you have to have Rab in order for them to open the gate. Remember?
Gotcha. Yep. Okay. I did go. Yeah, I must have gone up there. For some reason, I thought you could go to. I did walk in. Yes, I did. I forgot the order of events. Yeah, I did walk into
that's fine.
Port of Valor first and explored the Costa Valor area before I went up to Octagonia. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a long game, so remembering specifically what you did is not always going to happen.
Yeah.
Basically. But the Octagonia area, you got to sign up for the tournament arc. Yeah, why do people like the tournament arc? I don't get it. Usually the tournament arc's the lamest one in the animes, but whatever. Anyway, you sign up for the tournament, and it's a masked tournament, and
the MMA, masked martial arts.
Oh yeah, I forgot that part. And then one thing I love is that when they refer to you by the lot number you have, and you're number 11,
yeah.
Which I thought was clever.
Yay!
Which I'm sure they had to do because the game wasn't written with voice acting in mind, but you had to voice act around the fact that your character can have whatever name you want. So
yeah, it's why Sylvando calls you darling a lot.
Yeah, and that kind of thing. So at first you're paired up with this sexy chick with the long legs and the green outfit, but then her grandpa's like, nah, man, she with me. And then you're teamed up with the last champion, Vince, instead. Who's, he's pretty chill. He's pretty cool, right?
Calls you partner.
Yeah. He's calls you partner, and, he's pretty tough, and he's got a lot of strong medicines that he'll feed you so that you basically never lose any of the fights. So, and he drinks this strange crap before you fight as, some sort of tradition. But he's such a cool dude. He runs the orphanage.
Yeah, he takes care of orphans.
Yeah, so him taking steroids, it's okay, right? I mean, what? Steroids? No, that's not it. But, so, eventually, you find out that those two people are Jade and Rab, who very definitely are not going to join your party. It's not like you recognize them from the front cover.
From the loading screen when the game is booting up on the PS4.
Or Rab's when he's telling you the events that happened in the game when you're loading up a previous save.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, because that was great.
Yeah. So eventually you go up a couple of ranks, and I gotta say I love the dialogue for the first couple of rounds of the tournament. When they're talking about all the different competitors, and then because Eric also enters the tournament and he loses, and then he loses to Jade and Rab, and then Veronica's like, "You were distracted by her long legs out there, weren't you?" Which I really loved that line because not only was she sassing Eric, it's it was very clear that she was jealous of Jade and her being sexy, which I thought was a cool, subtle character moment for her to have.
Dude, that reminds me of when in Gallopolis you can get a puff puff and the rest of your party waits outside. And it's like it's a throwback to the DQ3 puff puff where you go in with the girl and then you're like
It's her dad.
It's her dad
Yeah.
giving you a massage. And then when you come out, Veronica's got her arms crossed and is tapping her foot, looking really angry at you.
Did you have a good time now?
Yeah, I think she said something like that. I was like, yeah.
What about it? You want to go?
Yeah.
Your turn.
Your turn.
Yeah. So, so Veronica's such a great character. But anyway, you go up a couple of ranks in the tournament. I love a lot of the different characters you fight. Like they have an abominable showman, which is great. I love the two girls. I think also have a really good fight too. Wambelina and Cinderella.
Yeah, the Beady Queens.
Oh yeah, and the mysterious Silva, you know.
And Golden Boy.
I wonder who.
Yeah.
Man, I wonder who that guy could be. You know, with his fight. Like, man.
And he like puts on a voice and stuff too. It was great.
He's like, oh, now we will see who truly is the strongest between. And it's great. I love Silva.
And I think he starts to call you darling, and then he's like, 11.
Yeah. So eventually, you realize that Vince is all of the fighters that you've been fighting have been going missing after you beat them. That's weird. And then someone breaks a hole in the orphanage, and you and Rab go down there in order to figure out what's going on.
Because Jade goes missing as well.
Yeah, Jade does go missing as well. So you go down there, and there's a spoopy spider down there. That's bad.
Yeah.
And guess what? Vince has been helping the spider the whole time. Bum bum bum. Which,
Surprise.
yeah, and so Vince has been feeding people to the spider to make spider piss steroids that he drinks before every fight. And he would have fought you to protect his secret, but they've been giving him heart attacks, so he doesn't. And so you just fight the spider and beat him up and win. I don't remember that fight being too hard, at least the first time.
I remember it being sort of annoying, but you also had guest star party member Rab. Like, you know, the magical fifth party member who as soon as he joins your party for good, though, no, we can only have 4 people out. What are you talking about?
Oh, man, like...
5 people? I don't understand.
It would get too crowded, obviously.
I'm gonna be in the wagon.
You're gonna be... We don't have a wagon!
Oh, crap!
No!
I'm gonna be in Hammer Space.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, I mean, it was annoying, but it wasn't really that bad. Having the extra party member helps. I think he can give you extra MP, if I remember correctly. And, you know, another set of spells always does you some good. So, yeah, you win. Vince promises to get off the juice. One thing that I really like as well is that I think you had already won the tournament by that point, but he asks for one more fight. And then, so you go into a battle scene with him, and since he's not on the spider juice anymore, he's really, really weak, and you beat him without a problem.
Yep.
Which, I just like when RPGs do that, you know?
Oh yeah,
Like,
because you won the thing, but the prizes went missing.
Oh yeah, because Rab and Jade end up stealing them. Yeah, so they steal both the marble and the rainbow,
Yeah,
I think, if I remember
rainbow
correctly.
was first place prize, and then the yellow orb was second place prize, and they stole both of them.
Yeah,
Greedy.
so then they're like, yo, come to Dunderzil if you want your crap. And so you have to go walk over there and follow them and figure out what the hell's going on with that, too. And the scenes at Dunderzil, I actually think, are among the best in the game, personally.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
Because first, Rab reveals that you're his grandson, and that, and he brings to light some of the info about Dunderzil and how monsters attacked it and whatnot. But then he's like, I want you to come with me. We need to do something. And what you're doing is a special ceremony to put the souls of the Dunderzil people who were killed in the monster attack, like 15, 16, however many years ago it was, to put their souls to rest. And the scene with all the butterflies flying out it's beautiful. It's a beautiful scene, like visually, but also emotionally as well, because you Rab is a pretty non-serious character for most of the story. Like he's not that he's got a lot of comic relief moments, but even when he's being like the wise mentor type figure, he's not ever really emotional a lot of the time. So seeing him break down kind of, and like when he's talking to the graves and like I found your son and stuff like that, like that hits pretty hard, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, the I would say there are three scenes in this game that made me tear up, and one that two of which made me tear up, and one of which actually made me cry. The two that made me tear up are the Chalky reunion and the Dundrazil scene with the butterflies, and I think you know what the last one is.
Yup.
I think if you've played the game, you know what the last one is. So, yeah. So I love that scene so much. Did you like it as much as I did, or were you like whatever?
No, it was a really good scene. Yeah, I think it was. I liked it. I think it built a connection with Rab as a character, because that's tough when you have a character come in and be like, "I'm your relative," and you're like, "Okay."
Yeah. Like I think that's a good point. Like that's part of why Fire Emblem Fates Birthright never did anything for me. It's just like, we're your family. Okay, cool. We love you. That's great, but I don't really know. I'm so glad you're back. Okay. Whereas with Rab, like, there's actually this moving emotional thing that you do together, right, when you meet each other, you know, which establishes a connection, I think. Which, yeah, like you said, which is really important.
And to clarify, like, the Rab is the father of your mother, Eleanor, and she, and your father was what's his name? Erdwin.
Erwin. Erdwin is the Erdwin is the legendary hero.
Gotcha,
That
yep.
is very much not Erdwin.
Yep. Erwin is your father, who is not related to Rob, but it's clear like Rob was very close to both of your parents.
Oh yeah, the scene in the second half of the game with the flashbacks involving Erwin are another really good part, but we'll get to that 5 hours from now probably. So and then somebody calls the cops, and the Heliodor
Who called the
people.
cops this time?
I don't know. Probably Putrix Stenkenheimer, I would have to imagine. The narc. Jeez. So anyway, I think it starts raining and you get separated and fall down a river, and then Jade saves you. Which...
Oh yeah, you have. This is when you really have, because Rob is sad and asks for some space, and Jade is like, "I want to talk to you." And
yeah.
You really,
I forgot
and it starts to really like get into Jade as a character, who I would describe throughout the game. Really, her relationship with the hero is more sisterly than anything else. You know, she's a few years older than him. She was there. She knew him when he was a baby, and helped him to escape when the monsters attacked.
But she ends up dropping him is the thing, and that's part of why he goes missing at the end, ends up in Cobblestone, is because she dropped him into the river at that point. And so, there's the whole symbolic thing where she's able to save him this time, and you end up in a cabin together as you recover and you talk some more. And so I guess we can talk about Jade a little bit as a character. Honestly, out of the main cast, not that she's bad, but she's probably my least favorite, I would have to say.
Yeah, I would say I probably have a similar opinion. She just didn't, she was one of the more static characters in the game.
Yeah.
And I liked I liked the moments where she was vulnerable, talking about her past. I think that was most endearing about that conversation with the hero, because you saw her being vulnerable, you saw her admitting that she felt like she'd failed him when she was a kid.
Yeah, and because she's very closed off most of the time. her party chat is, generally speaking, usually the most likely to feel like we have to go here and do the thing, which is usually my least favorite type of party chat. Granted, she does have a lot of moments that don't feel like that as well. Like, later on, there's a but thou must situation where if you say no, she almost kicks you and is just like, oh, sorry, I was just stretching my leg. So anyway, we're going to help this person, right?
I don't think I got that one. I did a lot of but thou must, but sometimes I just felt too bad saying no.
It was for Michelle. If you say no when talking about helping Michelle, that's when she'll do it.
Oh, I don't remember that one. That's funny.
Yeah, I think the fact that she's a pretty static character, most of her development is done at the very beginning, like, after you meet her. Because, like, if you think about it in terms of, like, the scenes that show that emotional growth, like, the scene where she literally saves the hero from drowning, mirroring what she couldn't do as a child, is kind of the thing that would signal the end of at least that character arc, you know?
Yep.
And it happens in, like, the 5th scene she's in the entire game.
Yeah.
So there's kind of some places for her to go with that, like, because she's your connection to Heliodor a lot of the time, because she is the king's son. Wow. Okay. She's the king's daughter. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that was the other big reveal about Jade, is like that. Hey, she's actually the princess of Heliodor.
Yeah,
the one
because
that
you thought that the
was
princess
dead.
died.
Yeah.
You thought the princess had died, and so she kind of gets some development by proxy by being related to, well, not related, but having a connection to Hendrik, Jasper, and the king. But one thing that I do like is that she's not just there to... She doesn't exist solely to develop those characters like many female characters do.
Yeah.
Like, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like, you know, the classic dead wife trope, you know. She's not that. Like, Jade actually being there and not being dead is part of what starts Hendrik to start thinking about what the heck's actually going on and start thinking for himself.
Yeah, because
which I think is
because right before, like, the hero falls off a cliff and Jade jumps after him, is when Hendrik realizes, like, wait, that's Jade. But
yeah, and then
but she's dead.
I think he talks to you before you rejoin the rest of the group too. And he's like trying to be more determined there, and he's just like, okay, you are the princess, but if you side with the Darkspawn, I'm gonna have to go after you too. Don't make me do this kind of conversation.
Yeah. And then Jade steals his horse. That was a funny moment.
Oh yeah, that was great when she steals the. Yeah, I forgot that she did that. Oh my gosh.
And I was like, dang, Hendrik's gonna have to call an Uber all the way to back to Heliodor. That's gonna be expensive.
Jasper, come pick me up. Ah, jeez. But yeah, so at this point, once you get your team together, you go back. You make a quick stop at Port of Orlor, where Sylvando very suspiciously doesn't want to go into town. Man, that's weird, right?
Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah, because if you go there before this moment, like, Sylvando's just not in your party. Like, if you go to party chat, he's just not there. And someone says something about, like, yeah, I think he said he didn't, like, he had something to take care of outside. Huh.
Yeah. Also, while we're talking about Port of Orlor, it has the best inn in Dragon Quest history, ran by the Slime.
He gives you a mini medal for staying too, right?
I know, it's a slooper duper inn. But anyway, after the quick pit stop there, the game kind of feels the most like a classic Dragon Quest game, because your goal is to find all the marbles, pretty much. So they're orbs. We're calling them marbles because it's fun.
Yeah, because that was something Rob essentially told you. Like, Rob essentially tells you when he joins.
Yeah, it's just like...
We need...
Yeah, because you're just looking for the rainbow because you have no better idea of what to do at that point.
And because Serena and Veronica think that might help you to get to Yggdrasil. They don't know how. They just think it might help.
Oh yeah, because you help Noah, the character Noah, who like knows all of the different rumors and stuff, and he's like, I heard that if you want to get to Yggdrasil, you need this thing called the Rain Vow, and you don't really know why, but you're just like, okay, well, we got literally no other plan, so let's just go for it. And then Rab is the one who tells you that you need to find all the different marbles. And luckily, we already have 2, so it's just a matter of finding the other 4 at that point. So I think the first one the game expects you to... I don't know if you can really get them out of order, though. I think some of them you might be able to do in specific orders, and some of them you can't. Like, I know Sniffleheim is definitely the one that the game expects you to do last.
Yeah.
But the first one you're most likely to get is the one with Michelle, the mermaid, because you start that quest literally as soon as you leave the inner sea. And oh my god. Oh, I forgot about scenes that almost made me cry, Michelle. Damn. So there's a town in the game, a fishing town called Honolulu, and they hate mermaids there because the Little Mermaid is overrated. I mean, they'll steal your souls. And so you find this mermaid, and she's like, won't you... She speaks in rhyme, too, which is surprisingly well done. Like, I thought that it would get annoying at points, and aside from a few rhymes that aren't really rhymes, which almost always happens with these kinds of things anyway, I think that her voice acting and delivery is really, really well done. Like, for all the mermaids in the game, actually. Especially the queen, which we'll talk about later. So she's like, help me find my boyfriend. And you're like, okay. So, I think that's when you fight the Tentacular. Is, for the Honolulu quest.
No, I think that was... There was one way later in the game where you fought...
Well, the Tentacular becomes a random encounter eventually.
Yeah.
But you don't fight the Tentacular at Gondolia. I think you fight it during Honolulu. Because you're trying to find a guy named Kai, and Kai and the other fishermen went to go fight the squid.
Yes, yeah, you're right, yeah. Because you borrow the cannon.
Yeah, you So, you fight the squid, and then you realize that, oh, the Kai who she's talking about was his grandpa, Kai Noah? Is that it?
One of them's Kai Noah, one of them's Kai Nui. But basically, he's dead.
Yeah, he's long dead. Like, Michelle saved him when he was about to die in a fishing accident, and he fell in love with her even though he had a wife back home. So he went back, and he was so love crazed about Michelle that he left his fiance and lived like a hermit on a shack outside of town. And his fiance was really sad about that, but got a different husband. And so I think eventually the story behind the Kai's grandfather is really sad. Because, like, he raises his fiance's child who she had with another man because that guy ended up going out fishing, and then I think he died because they couldn't handle it because Kai wasn't there to help steer the ship or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't really
remember. So, but basically the person his fiance married, the older Kai's fiance married, that man died. The fiance had the child, but then I think she drowned herself. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, she committed suicide.
She committed suicide with the baby, but the baby washed up on the beach where Kai had been exiled to. Yeah,
and then he decides to take care of the child, as a sort of redemption kind of thing.
And he was shunned by the entire village for falling in love with a mermaid and leaving his fiance.
Because the fiance was the chief's daughter,
yep.
And he was set to become the new village chief, and he just abandoned all that because he fell in love with the mermaid.
Yep.
And it's amazing that his adopted daughter ended up getting brought back, and the only reason why they did that is because it's not her fault.
Yep.
That her dad was like that.
And the younger Kai expresses to the cast that he's very, he works really hard and is very serious, because he wants to like stay a part of the village. He knows that his family has this stigma about them.
And he wants nothing to do with anything related to any mermaids that some weirdos with odd costumes come talking about. Because by this point, you got a bunch of ridiculous costumes on everyone, I'm sure. So, yeah. Which, you know, also, I feel like Honolulu is one of the most developed towns in the game. Because, like, there's a bunch of NPCs that are really cool there. Like the lady with all the cannons and, the dancer girl who very clearly does not have a crush on Kai. Why would you ever think that, Baka? You know? So, anyway, at this point, you're actually given a choice. He gives you something from old Kai's shack, and he's like, give this to the mermaid and tell her he's dead. Basically. It's the wedding veil, basically is what it is. So, at this point, you're given a choice. You can either give it to Michelle, lie and say he's coming, and she'll give you the harp to let you go underwater and get the marble, or you can tell her the truth. And, oh god, the game really wants you to tell her the truth, because they guilt trip you hard if you lie.
I told
like,
you
I
the truth.
didn't. I did as well, but I've seen some of the dialogue. If you lie, and it's pretty bad. It's just like, I wouldn't want to be sitting there living a lie, waiting for someone who's never come. And, you know, you actually do have the option to stop lying to her if you do choose to lie and then tell her the truth. And then you'll go through the cutscenes in Honolulu anyway.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I didn't know that, but you are able to do it.
Oh, okay. So better than me losing Amos.
At the very least, you don't have to replay the game again to make the right Well, is it the right decision? We'll get to it. Because Michelle, when you tell her that old Kai is dead, needs to see it for herself, and so she comes with you to the outskirts of the village, and then young Kai is there, and she wants to go to old Kai's grave, and so mermaids can go onto land. But if they ever do that, they lose their ability to swim. And if they ever touch seawater again, they die, basically. And so she goes up, she gives up her ability, she gives up her mermaidness to go onto the surface to, like, kiss old Kai's grave, and then she jumps back into the water, like, immediately afterwards. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And the fact that they're able to keep you that emotionally connected while she's speaking to you in rhyme, like, the voice actress for her is phenomenal. Like, jeez. Oh. Like, okay, but philosophically wise, is it better to lie to her so that she doesn't die, or tell her the truth but she kills herself?
I think it's better to tell her the truth. Because you can't control someone's actions in response to a thing, but I wouldn't feel comfortable lying to someone and having them live in false hope.
Okay. All
you
right,
know,
that's true.
her decisions are her decisions, and her mind was made up.
Okay. Yeah, it's still really sad, though.
Yeah, no, it's very sad.
Oh, yeah. So after that uplifting moment, you know,
you get the mermaid, you get the Lorelei's harp.
Oh yeah, and then you got to go to Nautica, which is a great area. There is a shark. He runs the shop. He's very dedicated to his work.
He doesn't understand you though when you try to talk to him.
You need to learn. You need to get the shark to human pocket dictionary in order to speak to him. So you can't buy stuff there just yet. I love Nautica's beautiful.
Yes.
Like, talk about amazing graphic areas of the game. Nautica's one of my favorites.
And it actually performs really well. Like, I didn't notice any slow. Like, you know, you move slower because you're underwater, but like you jump really slow. It's. Did you have fun like jumping places?
Oh yeah. Oh, jumpu. I think it's because it's not that big. But, like, it's not that big. It's big vertically is the big thing, because...
yeah, there's parts of Honolulu you don't get to explore the first time you visit.
Yeah, so...
But when you first
Yeah.
you first visit, it's a pretty, like, contained area.
Yeah, for sure. And the queen is like, yeah, I thought you might do that. And what's really, really sad is if you go to one of the rooms where a mermaid is saying, I'm cleaning this up for Michelle because her and her fiance are going to live here together.
Yeah. And you can tell she learns the truth if Michelle's
She does? Because I don't think, like, I mean, maybe later dialogue might, but at least in that moment, you don't have the option to tell her, and you don't acknowledge that Michelle's dead.
I think someone tells her later, because I think she said someone told her, like, that Michelle's gone, but she's going to keep the room neat anyways, like, in honor of Shelley.
Oh, okay, that's too sad, man. But they play the underwater music from Dragon Quest VI, which is really good.
Yes.
So you get the green marble from the Queen, from Queen Marina, who took a break from her DJing in the world of Splatoon to be a supporting character in Dragon Quest, I suppose.
She's not an octopus. She's not like an octopus mermaid. A friend of mine...
An octopus mermaid would be creepy.
Dude, a friend of mine has a tattoo that has an octopus mermaid and a shark mermaid.
Isn't an octopus mermaid just Ursula from The Little Mermaid?
Yeah, but this was a sexy mermaid. Like, not a creepy sexy mermaid, but not like a, like... It wasn't like Ursula. It was a good tattoo.
Alright. Alright, I'll believe it. So anyway, I think after that, you... what are you expected to do next? Because one of the marbles is just randomly in a valley someplace that you can just pick up, you know, whenever.
Yeah, one of them's in the... You can go underwater and take the transport, like the sparkly transport thing to go to the whole Champs Sauvages region, and that's where... That's where there's like 3 different destinations in there, because there's l'Académie de Notre Maître de Médaille.
Oh man, that's the best area in the entire game. Oh my god. Did you take time to look at all of the different posters on the walls? Yes. And stuff?
Yeah. You can't read them, but they're adorable.
There's the heel slime that washes his tentacles. And there's the, they have, like, chalk drawings of all the different monsters, and, if you look at, like, the newsletter, there's a point where, like, the walking corpse is smiling and whatnot, and is, like, saying something underneath, and, oh my gosh. It's one of those areas where the monsters and the humans are just hanging out, and the slime is trying to learn how to be a proper lady, and it's so good. Oh my gosh, I love Dragon Quest monsters. So
it's always cute when you get to see, like, friendly monsters and interact with them.
Oh yeah, especially with the best walking corpse in the Dragon Quest series, Malodor de l'Amour. It's just at the beginning they're like singing the school's theme song, and then you just see like a walking corpse with pink hair and a Draki in there.
Yes.
For some reason. It's so good. Oh man. So there's like not really anything to do there but some quests, but it's just such a charming area to just exist in the
It's basically there because
game.
There's no mini metal king in this game. Instead you have
there's a mini metal principal instead.
Yes. Yep, and you don't really, like, you trade them in, but you get stamps instead. That was kind of cool. You had a little stamp book.
Yeah, I really like that, and it also gives you a clear idea of when the next one is going to be too.
Yes.
One thing that I like about it is that because through most of the game you're finding mini medals in set locations, and then there's like 110 total. But if you can't find them all, once you get to like late post game, enemies do stop dropping them.
I noticed that.
So,
yeah, that kind of surprised me the first time. Enemies, like, I stole mini medals or an enemy dropped a mini medal. I was like, wait, I thought there was a set number.
I think it's really cool so that if you're at like 108 out of 110, you don't have to comb the entire world for the last 3.
Yep. I mean, that was a mistake that DQVIII made, where certain mini medals could be gone for good.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. Oh, yeah, because if you fix something and then they load a new version of the area.
Yeah, and also just, like, certain areas you couldn't go back to, and also with what's it called? The town that you build, the monster town.
Oh, there are mini medals in the town.
There are mini medals in the town at certain stages of its development. So if you say develop the town, say there's a mini medal that appears when it's in stage 3 and then 2 in stage 5. If you don't get the stage 3 one, it's not there anymore.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I'm glad that.
I like the way they handled this. This
Yeah.
game is really well handled as far as like being able to completion things.
Yeah, because you can never miss anything. Like, there are points where you're locked out of doing stuff for a time, but eventually you will be able to complete every quest, get every bestiary entry, get all the mini medal rewards, all that. It's you might not be able to do it for some time, but by the end you can do everything, which I just think is really, really cool.
Yes.
And I personally prefer the systems where you find the mini medals and then get the rewards based on that, as opposed to the ones where they're drops anyway, because it makes them kind of feel more grindy,
Yeah,
personally.
I agree.
Yeah, so I really like the way they handled it. The Eerie is the one that actually has the marble in it, right? With all the Hellcondors.
It's implied that a bird stole, or what I always got was that a bird stole it.
Which I do think is funny. I love that area. Like, that's one of my favorite. Like, that's an area that feels like a dungeon, even though it's on the overworld and plays the standard overworld music, you know?
Yeah.
So, I really like that area. Does the game want... Okay, so wait. That's 3 marbles.
And then you can go... I don't remember...
No,
yes,
no, that's
you have
4
to go-
marbles. There's
you
4
ha-
marbles. Phenomenon you have to do in order to get the
the
magic key
magic
to go
key.
to Sniffelheim.
Also,
But there's
you
one
ha-
other one.
Rob brings one with him. Rob just
Oh.
has one.
Oh, right. Okay. So,
Eric has one. You get one in Octagonia. Rob has one. You get one from Queen Marina. You find one in the Eerie, and you get one in Sniffelheim.
Okay, yeah. So the next thing that happens is Sniffelheim. Well, you can get the one in the Eerie whenever, but you're kind of expected to get it now because it's on the
Well,
way.
there's the phenomenon thing first.
Oh yeah,
I
sorry.
guess.
You see, I thought I was saying phenomenon, but Sniffelheim came out of my mouth because I'm a dumb person. Anyway, a phenomenon is a legitimately creepy area, actually,
Yeah.
because at first you think it's like, oh, there's all these tourists and whatnot, and then Dora the Explorer shows up, but has lost her friend Boots and is very sad. And you and Sylvando and his detective agency are going to help find her parents. But everybody's really interested in this painting on the wall, which, you know, seems pretty cool and whatever, but it's nothing special. It's a painting. But everybody's convinced that it'll bring, like, good luck and happiness and all that other junk. And everybody starts arguing about it in front of the thing, and you're like, F this, I'm out.
Yeah.
But then all those people go missing, which is super spooky. And so you go back, and oh man, the mural has more people on it than it did before. That's weird.
That was creepy.
Yeah, and then you find out that the painting's evil. The little girl was actually a projection from the painting, trying to lure you in, and you get sucked inside of it, and you go to the other side, which is a really cool area. It's the area specifically with the 3 different floors and all the staircases. I thought was a really, really cool kind of place.
That was a long dungeon, but it was like it was a very like in-depth dungeon.
I think it was the kind of dungeon I'd been kind of itching for at that point, because many of the dungeons are pretty straightforward. Like the Aractagon's cave, pretty straightforward. A lot of the areas, like, there is exploring to do, but I think part of what made it cool was that it felt 3-dimensional, which we hadn't seen. Like, I played a lot of Dragon Quest, but Dragon Quest VIII is really the only one that has any dungeons that feel 3-dimensional, and I kind of wanted some more of that. So having to, like, look at the map and think about, okay, I have to go from this floor to this floor to this floor in order to get to where I want to go, and make sure I get all the treasure chests along the way was really cool. Is that also where we find our good friend Mr. Cannabox-chan for the first time? No, wait, that's where we find the
colossal Cannabox.
The colossal Cannabox. Like, You didn't think you were going to get anything good by opening that,
Oh,
right?
I knew. I didn't even need to. It was like this giant chest. I'm like, I wonder if this is a trap. I don't even need to cast Peep. It's clearly a trap.
But you opened it anyway.
I mean,
course.
you were the one who told me that to beat all the mimics and canna boxes because they give you seeds of skill.
Yeah, but I also fight them all anyway in every Dragon Quest game.
I do too. I just like sometimes I like to use Peep just so I know should I heal up.
That's a good point. So anyway, you eventually make it to the end, and then you fight the painting, whose name is a pun that I both appreciate and kind of groaned at the same time, because the painting is called I Am Dora in Gray, because she's all like, oh man, I'm the most beautiful painting ever, everybody should just worship me all the time. And if you've ever read the story, The Portrait of Dorian Gray, you'll kind of get what that's a reference to. But at the same time, most of the time the pun names for Dragon Quest monsters don't bother me. But since that one was like a boss fight that we were supposed to be taking seriously, I was kind of like, really?
She also wasn't black and white.
Yeah, that's also...
That was my issue. You're called Dora in Gray, and you're in full color. Come on.
Maybe in the 1950s it made more sense. Because color didn't exist back then. So, yeah. But I mean, that was a really cool area. And once you beat it, you don't get a marble, but you get the magic key. So, looks like it's time to backtrack and open up every door that I've passed by and made a mental note of.
Yep.
Yep. So, and then after that, so you can actually explore a good deal of the Sniffelheim region before doing any of that. I was talking to Qatherine about this. Actually, did I say this in the discussion itself? We've been going for 3 hours. You'll have to forgive me for forgetting. I explored the library before even doing any. I think after I did Honolulu, I just explored everything I could before continuing other plot stuff, and so that included exploring most of Sniffelheim, including the library dungeon.
Wow.
So yeah, Sniffelheim is I think a really cool location. Get it? No? Okay. So anyway, you meet the Hot Queen, and she's like, man, this witch froze all my people. What a jerk. You should go do something about that. And so you go try to do something about that. But you need to first go to you need to go get your library card, because you need to learn how to stop her, because otherwise... I forget what the specific... Oh, you needed to learn the spell for the scholar guy to put her back into the book. That's what you needed to do. And so you go there, and the library dungeon is one of my favorites in the game, for the record, because again, it involved that kind of three-dimensional thinking about twisting around the different layers of the library and stuff.
Yeah. You had to look at the map a lot, or at least I did.
Oh, no, I did too. And also it has some of the best monsters in the game, too, with Professorus.
Professorus is my favorite monster.
I loved that you could walk around and then you would find the Professorus teaching a class to the mages.
Yes, that was I love that they did that. They had a Professorus just specifically loaded in front of either mages or platypunks. And they're just standing there listening. And then I think if you go back later, there's 3 platypunks listening to the professor, and then one behind them with his back to the professor sleeping.
It's so good. The attention to detail with how they place the monsters in this game is amazing. So you go through the library, you get the spell you need to seal away the witch, and then you go through the forest and wait, is it at that point where you freeze and pass out? I think.
You run into good old Hendrik first.
Oh yeah, you run into Hendrik, and then I think you freeze and pass out. And Veronica takes care of you and is very at a loss for words when you wake up. And they said that she was very worried about you. Oh man. Oh. So yeah, I think you do run into Hendrik. And then, like, because it's implied at that point that Jasper was in the library because he left something behind in there. And so Hendrik's like, Herm! And he walks away without, like, trying to fight you, which is strange at that point. So,
yeah, because you and Hendrik fight the witch's pet.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking, you were told by the Queen Frizabelle, that you need to defeat the witch's pet, so the witch itself, like witch herself, can be defeated. So you and Hendrik defeat the witch's pet, but then suddenly the witch appears, and traps you and Hendrik, and says something about, like, it takes Hendrik's pendant, and says something
that's
about
what happens,
how
yeah.
the man who freed her had one of those too.
Yeah. And so
I'm like, okay, that's clearly Jasper.
Yeah, so Hendrik at that point is just like, I need to go brood about this, whatever. You go back to the town and then fight the queen for realsies, and the scholar that you're with, whose name escapes me at the moment,
Snorri.
Snorri, there we go, thank you. And then he mispronounces the incantation, but then after you beat the witch Crystalinda, he traps her in a book, and then she starts whining at you to let her out, but, you know, that's not the case, right? You saved everybody. The town's free and whatever. But then you go to talk to the queen to get your marble for all your hard work, and the book starts yelling at you, and it turns out you accidentally put the queen in the book instead of the witch. Oops. But it's okay, because the witch and the queen are lesbians now. So
that was so strange, because you basically figure out, okay, the queen is not, like, actually, you know, yeah, we sort of screwed up, and the queen is in the book, and the person who's pretending to be the queen is the witch again. But then, so you fix it, and you're like, I don't think you even have to re-fight her. She just
no, because the queen's like, I know how hard it was for Crystalinda to be trapped in there for so long. I think she means it when she says she's sorry. We're gonna give her a chance here. And everybody's like, okay, sure.
And then if you come back, it's like increasingly feeling like they're in a relationship, and I'm like,
and then
okay.
there's this one maid who says, "Oh, I've been friends with the queen ever since she was a small girl." And then as you talk to her, she's like, "Oh, that Crystalinda just keeps on spending more time with the queen, and I have less and less time alone with her." And you know, and there's this one old lady who's just like, "Oh man, they're such good friends, aren't they?" And it's like, okay, they're lesbian.
Yep.
Which, I mean, great for the queen, because Crystalinda is a fine piece. So, you know,
it felt pretty random, but I was like, okay, cool.
It's like, I mean, I think that they actually do handle it pretty well in later parts of the game when other bad stuff happens, and the first instinct that people have is to throw the witch in jail.
Yeah, and what I like is the witch is, well, but also the witch is sort of like, yeah, I knew this might happen, whatever.
Yeah, and the queen doesn't want to do it, but Crystalinda is like, just do it because it'll make everybody else feel better, you
exactly,
know?
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really cool, like, small, like, I mean, these characters aren't super important by that point in the game, but it's nice that they put that thought into what their reactions would be to the situation, you know? So, yeah, at this point you have all your marbles, and so you can go to Arborea, which is Veronica and Serena's hometown, and go find Yggdrasil. I don't think anything super exciting happens at Arborea. They're just like, oh, you're the chosen one, you're gonna save everybody. Yeah, good job.
You meet the parents. You meet Serena and Veronica's parents.
Oh yeah, that's true. There's also the kid that's getting baptized as well. So yeah, and then you have to go through the first forest and up to Yggdrasil, and the first forest is a beautiful area
Yes.
for the record. Like, and Yggdrasil, like, oh my gosh, Yggdrasil is a gorgeous area, and the music there is wonderful. Oh yeah, when you're camping, you do have a really heartfelt scene with all the people camping. It's just like, okay, we're about to end this, right? And the game is kind of trying to make you think that you're getting close to the end at this point. But I feel like if you'd played a Dragon Quest game, you kind of know that at this point you're not near the end.
Yeah.
Because in almost all of the games, even after you collect all of the MacGuffins, there's almost always a twist, and there's almost always more to do. Even as early as Dragon Quest III. You know, you get all the orbs and you fight Baramos in that game, but there's still the Dark World after that. You know,
Yep.
So the big thing about it is what happens in Dragon Quest XI. I know that we already put a spoiler warning up, but if you are really interested in playing the game and you haven't yet, I would actually recommend turning the game off now. I mean, the video off now, and playing it for yourself, because this next section is one of the things about the game I didn't expect at all.
Yeah, no, me
And
neither.
it's really, really well done. So
It's a reason why, like, you won't see, like, I think Ted and I both sort of, like, stopped posting pictures on Twitter about our playthroughs at some point. As I told a friend of mine who hasn't played it yet but is a huge Dragon Quest fan, I was like, I cannot show you my file anymore.
Oh yeah, because they changed the title screen. Oh yeah.
Well, you know, it's like, I'm like, I can't show you, you know, there's a point at which it's like, even just booting up the game, yeah, it's gonna be a spoiler.
Yeah, because, like, the game, as you're playing, will show, like, when you get to the title screen, it'll show different pictures. Like, at first it's just a grassy field, and then they'll show, like, Heliodor or Nautica. Once you get past this point, they start showing scenes that will make absolutely no sense to anybody who hasn't gotten that far, and will
And just also certain changes to, like, the overworld that happen.
Yeah, so you can't... Yeah, if you want to... Like, I mean, not that I think it ruins the story as in, like, it's not enjoyable to... Because there are some things that aren't enjoyable to experience unless you see them blind. It's not that, like, the story's no longer enjoyable if you know this upcoming twist, but it's worth keeping the surprise, basically. So you get all the marbles, you go up to Yggdrasil, and Yggdrasil kept a sword there for you, all nice and cozy, which is
Yeah,
nice.
I think it's basically said that this is the sword wielded by the hero before you, Erdwin.
Yeah.
And, you know, your goal has been to go here and retrieve this sword so you can defeat the Lord of Shadows, Mordegon. And Rob is the first one to tell you that name and basically, like, explain what your goal is. You know you have, like, this thing you have to do, but Rob is the first one to, like, basically give you an itemized list. Get the orbs, go to Yggdrasil, get the sword, defeat Mordegon.
Because you had heard rumblings about, like, a Lord of Shadows, and you obviously knew something was up with the Heliodor people, but you didn't know what. So, you go there, and you try to grab the sword, but, surprise, Jasper's been following you the entire time, and he shoots a black energy bolt into your back. And he's also covered with the power of darkness. So when you try to beat him up, it doesn't work. Surprise, surprise. So he kicks your butt. But luckily, Hendrik is here. He's come to his senses and realized that...
And he brought the king! He brought the king to show the king that Jasper is a traitor to Heliodor.
Oh, man. And, you know, the king, he's so moved by Hendrik's dedication to his work and showing him the error of his ways that he stabs him. And turns out the king was actually being possessed by Mordegon the entire time. So Mordegon walks out of the king, takes the sword, and in one of the coolest things ever, is he transforms Erdwin's sword into a sword of shadows that's, like, really big and grotesque looking with, like, an eyeball on the hilt. And that part of what made that really cool as a Dragon Quest fan is that sword is really iconic. It's like
The Erdwin sword?
yeah, the Erdrick sword, because It'd be like if you're a Zelda fan, if Ganondorf picked up the Master Sword and turned it into something else.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
was. You definitely got a feeling of. Oh, but first, so he can grab the sword, he sucks the luminary powers out of you.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
He grabs the hero and just like force chokes the luminary powers out of you, and the luminary symbol on your hand disappears and goes on his hand. And it's like, no, that's like the whole feeling I got watching that. You feel very helpless, and you feel like that's mine. That's mine.
It's like he's
power.
desecrating the whole thing as well. Like
I mean, he does. He like turns the sword of light into the sword of shadows, and it's giant and ugly and has an eyeball in the hilt.
Yeah, it's so like so. Dragon Quest, like we mentioned this at some point. Dragon Quest doesn't always do villains great. Like, there are some games with fantastic villains. Like Dragon Quest IV, Sorrow's a great villain. Dragon Quest V, Nimzo isn't really the main villain, but Nimzo is a great antagonistic force throughout the course of the game.
Do you mean Ladja?
Oh yeah, sorry. Nimzo.
Nimzo was the lame one.
Yeah. Sorry, Ladja. Dragon Quest VIII. Dual Magus is a really engaging villain as well. Not so much Rapthorn, but you know. But a lot of Dragon Quest villains, while some of their designs are really good, like the Dragon Lord from Dragon Quest I has a great design, but in terms of being a villain, it's a game from 1986, so what do you expect?
Same thing with like Malroth. Like Malroth is just this like, Hargon's plan worked. He summoned the god of death.
Yeah, so like Dragon Quest villains are often like just this big bad person that you need to beat up at the end of the journey. And it's hard for, like, of course they're supposed to be threatening, but it's hard for them to feel threatening a lot of the time when they're so disconnected from what's going on. Like, that's actually, Nimzo is the big example. Like, Nimzo is so disconnected from what's going on because Ladja is the one doing all of his work for him, you know? And so you really feel this anger and hate towards Ladja, but Nimzo is just Ladja's boss, you know? Whereas, not only do you hate Jasper for working for Mortigan the whole time, you hate Mortigan because he does something very personal and very wrong to you. Like, with the scene where he pulls the luminary stuff out of you, like, my eyes were, like, stapled wide open and staring at the screen.
Also, it's worth mentioning that this was in, like, super nice, like, 3D, you know, CG. This was, like, the extra good CG. The
extra good CG, yes, for
this
sure.
was, like, because a lot of the game has, like, the cutscenes, I would say, you know, like, it's very well animated. But this is, like, then they have, for a very few scenes in the game, including, like, that intro movie, they have scenes that are in, like, CG that if these were not anime stylized characters, it would be super realistic. But it is super realistic as far as lighting effects, clothing effects.
It's like Pixar
detail.
level CG, pretty much. Yeah, so, and then he blows up the tree, everybody's scattered, and the game asks you to save.
Yeah, game over, guys. I was like, when this happened, I was like, holy cow. Dragon Quest just did the thing that made Final Fantasy VI so unique as a game.
And did it better.
So I was talking, I think it did better. But like, I was talking to a friend of mine who isn't sort of on the internet, in the sort of community we are. And he's played a lot of RPGs, like, more RPGs than anyone else I know. And he had said to me that what he loves about Final Fantasy VI is that you lose. You know, you, like, Act 1 of the game ends with the bad guy won. And now you have to, like, pick up the pieces and find your party and, you know, deal with this world of ruin. And that's exactly what happened here. You lost. You had this goal and you were so close to getting it, and then you lose everything.
Yeah, and I mean,
and it's just such a sharp twist, and you're like, is this a joke? Like, the tree falls out of the light world tree, which is like, the leaves are supposed to represent the lives of everyone, like every person in the world. The tree just loses all of its leaves and crashes to the ground. And you're like, talk about like, when the tree, like, lost all of its leaves in that big burst, that was
like, it's
powerful image.
It feels so hopeless is the big thing. Like,
Yes.
you in like Final Fantasy VI, because that's the closest example. I didn't truly feel hopeless when the world ended. I only truly felt that hopeless when I was doing the minigame with Celes and you were trying to keep Sid alive and I failed because I didn't know what you were supposed to do.
Because she tries to kill herself, yeah. And I mean, it's such a desolate minigame, you know, like it's you know, you find out you've been here for like months or years, I forget, and Sid's just been tending to you, and you know, the only person you know, like, you don't know where anyone else in your party is. You are completely alone, except for this man who took care of you, and now he's dying.
Yeah, so like when you fail that minigame, then you start to feel the hopelessness, but before that, like, I mean, maybe it's the translation, because I played the original translation. Maybe it's just that it's a 16-bit game, or, you know, whatever. But I didn't truly feel as, like, completely hopeless as Dragon Quest XI made me feel. And then there's also the fact that I think that the reuniting of the different characters is done better here than it is in that game. But that'll probably be more of a discussion for the part 2 of this, where we talk about the second half of the game, which is so good. Oh my gosh. But yeah, it's such a... I didn't expect it to go that far, basically, you know? Like, and to really love a Dragon Quest villain that much, it wasn't something I expected, you know? I kind of go into Dragon Quest expecting the main bad guy you go to fight at the end to be not, like, a driving force. He's just sitting there in his chair, stroking his cat, and waiting for you to show up and kick him in the face, you know? Like, I love Jasper and Hendrik as villains. Like, Hendrik isn't a villain anymore, obviously, but, like, I was expecting Jasper to be the main interesting character, and to love both him and Mortigan was so... Oh, man, it was so good. Like, I'm just gushing at this point, basically. So anyway, are there any other closing notes that we should have before we take a break? Because my throat's starting to hurt because it's been 3 hours and 11 minutes.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, you said, I would agree exactly with what you said. It was a really powerful twist. It's something, yeah, that was new to DQ as a series, as far as I'm aware.
It didn't feel like a rip-off either, as
No,
well. Like, it's an
it
obvious
really
comparison, but I didn't feel like it was just ripping it off.
Yeah,
either.
like, I drew parallels to Final Fantasy VI because it's the closest thing I can think of, but it also just felt like it was doing its own thing, you know, especially with this added aspect of, like, betrayal, and Hendrik finds out right before everything hits the fan. Like, Hendrik finds out, like, Jasper was a traitor, and he was secretly working for the king, but he was secretly actually doing this under the king's orders, because the king is actually the Lord of Shadows. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there was that added thing. But yeah, and you just felt so helpless. You just felt like there was nothing you could do to stop this.
And it's, to briefly go into the next part of the game, it's magnified when it's shown. It's always so cool when they show it through gameplay too, because the Lord of Shadows steals your luminary powers, meaning you don't have those skills on your grid anymore.
Oh my gosh,
so
that
you
was
can't
crazy.
cast Zap, you can't cast Holy Protection. All of those really cool stat buffs gone. And if you've liked the instant pep ability, sucks to be you.
I
You don't
love
get
that
to use
ability.
you don't get to use it anymore. So yeah, it's so well done. Yeah. So
That was a really sad ending to the game, but
I know it sucks. You know, darkness wins. You know.
this is too sad. Alexa, play Despacito.
So anyway, I'm not sure when we'll be able to do part 2, but hopefully sometime soon. I'm actually not sure when I'm even going to get around to editing this, actually, now that I think about it. But,
That's okay.
yeah.
It'll be on the internet, and then we'll just be there. And
Oh,
no one will
okay,
ever
good point.
know.
All right. Okay. So anyway, we're going to sign off for now. Have a good night, everybody.